Chapter 1352. 3 days later. Lin soon woke up from meditation, and his exhaustion and injuries had bin swept away. The battle in the ultimate place of inheritance only made him consume a lot of energy, but he was not seriously injured. The seventh tribulation of longevity realm opening his eyes, Lin soon felt a strong omen in his heart. It wouldn't be long before he would usher in the eighth tribulation of longevity. This tribulation was called fate, and the power involved the most essential mystery of the cultivator. Some people could pass it easily. Some people would die here because the power of fate was too terrifying. Every single cultivator suffered a different energy of tribulation, and it was extremely obscure and terrifying. Fate is the destiny that is predestined at birth. Since ancient times, all living beings in the world have been floating between life and death. They are as small as ants and as big as gods. All of them have their own fate. Fate is regarded as predetermined at birth. For example, if ordinary people don't cultivate, their lifespan will be limited to 100 years. They will experience the pain of birth, old age, illness and death all their lives, and they can't transcend it. But for us cultivators, fate is like a shackle. If we want to live as long as heaven and earth, we should break this shackle and get rid of the burden of fate. However, the secret of fate is like a taboo, and its tribulations are also unspeakable. If we want to break it, it depends on each person. This tribulation is not difficult, but dangerous. Lin soon pondered. Since he started cultivating, his knowledge and experience had long been different. His understanding of himself, heaven and earth, and Tao was also incomparable to before. It was because he knew the unfathomable power of fate that Lin soon knew that the eighth tribulation of longevity was more dangerous than the karma disaster and the karma disaster. I was born in the heart-cleansing peak of the forbidden city of the empire. If I want to break the tribulation of fate, I should start from the source. While thinking, Lin soon got up and walked out of the cave residence. The sky was bright and clear, as if it had been washed. Old Toad, Big Blackbird, and Alu were drinking beside a waterfall and flowing spring. They were chatting noisily and happily. On the other side, Zhao Jingxian stood at the side of the stream, holding a weasel brush in her hand as she practiced calligraphy on the table. Her jet-black hair was coiled into a bun, revealing her snow-white neck. Her waist was curved in a graceful arc as she bent over the desk to read. Her side profile was delicate and clear, her eyes were focused, and her demeanor was quiet and gentle. The hem of her light purple dress fluttered in the wind. The surroundings were lush with flowers and trees, creating a picturesque scene. She stood in the painting, but she was even more beautiful than the painting. Lin Sun stepped forward. At this time, Zhao Jingxian finished writing and raised her body. When he noticed Lin's approach, he tore the white paper into pieces and crumpled it into a ball as if he had a guilty conscience. "Why are you acting like a thief?" Lin touched his nose and became more and more curious. What was Zhao Jingxian writing just now? Zhao Jingxian was wearing a light purple dress, which accentuated her graceful and slender figure. Her face was like a beautiful jade, her eyes were like a clear spring, and her nose was like a carved jade. However, with a trace of shame and annoyance on her pretty face, she stared at Lin Sun and said, "You are the thief who sneaked in without telling me." The beauty in front of him had bright eyes and white teeth. Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. Standing next to her was like standing next to a crepe myrtle flower blooming in the spring breeze in March. She was picturesque, and the scenery also became a foil, which made people feel relaxed and happy. In the end, Lin Sun didn't ask what Zhao Jingxian was writing just now. However, after many things, Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian both knew that the relationship between them was no longer as simple as before. It was also a long time later when Zhao Jingxian talked to Lin Sun about today's event. She said a line of words written on the white paper, "May I be like the Star King and the moon." Every night the flowing light was bright. 10 days later, the absolute summit domain will end and disappear from the world. On the same day, the news spread throughout the upper 9 regions and was known by the strong people in different areas. It's time to leave. Many people sighed with emotion. Over the years, in order to rise, in order to compete for opportunities, how many bloody fights had taken place? How many talented people had been killed or injured? Now, it was finally time to leave, which made people feel sad and reluctant. Everyone knew that it was impossible to have a chance to enter the absolute summit domain in the future. Hurry up, collect all the royal medicines and divine medicines planted on the mountain, and take all the excavated divine materials and spiritual materials away. On the famous mountains and blessed lands, the strong people of the major forces hurriedly started to make preparations before leaving. Since they were about to leave, no one would leave behind the treasures they had collected. Send an order to those who are exploring opportunities to return quickly. The absolute summit domain will disappear in 10 days. Don't be trapped in it. Alas, I really don't want to leave. In just a few years, our cultivation has risen steadily and we have today's combat power. If we can cultivate here for more time, it won't be a problem to become a sage. Humph, after the absolute summit domain ends, there will be a great battle in the world. The outside world is the stage where we can show our skills and shake the world. On this day, all kinds of voices sounded. Some people were reluctant to leave, some people were melancholy, and some people were complacent and full of pride. Haha, in the outside world, Lin Sun, the first person in the absolute summit domain, won't have such a great deterrent. On this day, some people also sneered. He has killed so many peerless figures. How can the sex behind these peerless figures spare him? Wait and see. When the outside world knows what happened in this absolute summit domain, Lin Sun is destined to bear the anger of countless sects. Flying Star Mountain. Lin Sun and others were also making preparations before leaving. Big Brother, according to past experience, after leaving the absolute summit domain this time, we will appear in the place of guidance along the original road. Old Toad said quickly, we must be careful. In the absolute summit domain, there are no saints. But in the ancient desolation domain, with our current combat power, we are not able to compete with the saint. Lin Sun nodded. He naturally understood this. Old Toad reminded again, in the past 10 years, countless strong people have died in your hands. If the sects behind them know this news, they will definitely hate you and regard you as an enemy. Lin Sun said with a smile, Old Toad, we have experienced this kind of thing a lot, haven't we? Of course. When they returned from the land of Ultimate, Lin Sun and others were besieged by a group of kings. At that time, Lin Sun and others were still weak in cultivation. Thanks to the help of the cyan-clothed old ape beside Yuan Fatian, they were able to escape safely. After participating in the Junior Tycoon list, Lin Sun also faced this kind of danger. He was blocked by a group of old monsters of King Realm in the Star Chess Sea. And now, after leaving the absolute summit domain, the situation they faced was no different from before. The only difference might be that Lin Sun didn't have much ability to fight back before. But now it was completely different. The old monsters of King Realm, whom he was afraid of in the past, were no longer a threat. If they dared to provoke him again, it was absolutely no different from seeking death. The only thing that could threaten Lin Sun might be the strong of the Saint Realm. However, how could Lin Sun be afraid? The trump card in his hand was enough to make him not afraid of the saints. Big Brother, what's your plan after returning to the ancient desolation domain? Alu suddenly asked. Lin Sun nodded. He had made up his mind. Although Yunqi Bai was dead, the accomplice of the Lin family's murder was still alive. It was time to solve these things. If everything went well, Lin Sun would consider returning to the mortal world. Alu, do you have other plans? Old Toad suddenly asked. Well, the old bastard who raised me said that he wanted me to go home after returning from the absolute summit domain. He said that he wanted to tell me my life experience. Alu nodded. Lin Sun and others had learned before that Alu was brought up by his master. As for his life experience, even he himself didn't know. Do you want us to go with you? Lin Sun asked. No, that old bastard definitely won't agree. Alu shook his head. What about you? Lin Sun looked at the big black bird. The big black bird was startled. Then, with a desolate and helpless expression, it sighed and said, Even though I want nothing more than to flatten the great earth scripture temple, I have to make another trip there. Back then, holy monk Du Ji left behind some karma. I have to go and resolve it. The Great Earth Temple. Lin Sun frowned at the mention of this sacred place, and his heart was full of killing intent. From the 18 Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva to Gu Fozi, they all regarded him as a heretic and wanted to kill him. And according to the big black bird, unless Lin Sun died, the Great Earth Temple would never let him go. It was like fighting to the death. Lin Sun had made up his mind a long time ago that sooner or later, he must destroy the Great Earth Temple. In fact, you should be more concerned about Miss Zhao. On the way back, she has to be separated from us for a while, otherwise she can't get out of the Absolute Summit domain. Old Toad reminded him. This was true. At the beginning, they and Zhao Jingxian entered the Absolute Summit domain from different places, so the return route must be the same. Even so, Zhao Jingxian was still embarrassed by Old Toad's words. She couldn't help but kick him and said, It's not a separation of life and death. Do you need to be a good person? Lin Sun also kicked him and said with a smile, You talk too much. You don't even want your brother after you have a woman? Is this the legendary forgetting friends at the sight of love? Old Toad shouted and ran away, making Alu and others laugh. The Immortal Burning Realm. In the Immortal Burning City, Kai Kai carefully held the earthen jar and walked on the bustling street. She was a little reluctant to leave. She originally wanted to gather some fiery glow spirit dew, yet in the end, she heard that the curtains to the apex region were about to fall now. All the practitioners in the Immortal Burning Realm were busy packing up their things and preparing to leave. Some shops in the city also closed their doors and began to count and collect goods to prepare for leaving the Absolute Summit domain. Kai Kai heard that now not only in the Immortal Burning Realm, but also in other places of the 3,000 worlds, such scenes were happening. 10 years had passed by so quickly. Kai Kai became more and more reluctant to leave as she thought about it. Suddenly, she stopped, and a trace of firmness appeared in her star-like eyes. She turned around and flew in the direction of the city gate. Before she left, she wanted to collect the fiery glow spirit dew again. She still remembered that there was an unusually gorgeous fiery glow over a canyon thousands of miles away from the Immortal Burning City, like a divine fire burning in the sky, extremely beautiful. Miss, I heard that you have a lot of fiery dew in your hands? However, not long after Kai Kai left the city, a black-robed young man suddenly appeared in front of her and asked, P.S. More updates tonight. Before 10 p.m., friends, please subscribe. Subscription means to come online to read books with Zongheng coins. Chapter 1353. Yes, young master. Kai Kai was startled, and then she spoke cautiously. Although Kai Kai's cultivation had not improved much over the years, her experience was extremely rich. After all, to be able to survive until now in the bloody and cruel zone of extinction was not something that could be achieved by luck. She recognized at a glance that the young man in black was a king, and his cultivation was extremely high. He was at least at the longevity 5th retribution realm. In the current burning celestial realm, the longevity 5th retribution realm could be said to be the top overlord, and no one dared to provoke them. How much do you have? The young man in black looked at Kai Kai with interest. About 50 kilograms. Kai Kai estimated and answered seriously. These are 10 king herbs. I believe it's enough to buy all of your fiery spirit dew. The young man in black took out a storage bag and handed it to Kai Kai. As he spoke, He stared at the girl in front of him. She had a clean, beautiful, and pure face, and the more he looked at her, the more he liked her. In particular, the girl in front of him had an aura of elegance all over her body. She was fresh and unique, and a feast for the eyes. The young man in black boasted that he had seen many beautiful women over the years, but compared to the girl in front of him, they seemed a little tacky. "Thank you, young master." Kai nodded. She took out the earthen jar that she was holding and handed it over to him. The young man in black took it, but he did not look at it. He stared at the girl in front of him and said, "I still lack a personal maid. If you are willing, you can follow me in the future." His voice was calm, but it carried a hint of reservation and conceit. It was as if it was a great honor to be able to follow him and cultivate. Kai was stunned, then she shook her head and said, "No, thank you, young master." Only then did she understand that he did not want to buy the fiery spirit dew, but to take her as a maid. The young man in black was stunned. With his identity and his current cultivation, there would be a lot of women throwing themselves at him with a wave of his hand. But now, he was rejected. Moreover, the other party was just a girl at the reincarnation development realm. Next to the young man in black was a burly man. After hearing the words, his face was full of displeasure and hostility, and he looked coldly at the ungrateful girl in front of him. The young man in black waved his hand and signaled his squire not to scare the beauty in front of him. He smiled and said, "How about this? You can think about it. I don't want to make things difficult for you, but you have already taken 10 king herbs from me. If you reject me like this, I'm afraid it's not good, right?" He was very disdainful. 50 kilograms of fiery spirit dew was at most 8 king herbs. He believed that the girl in front of him. "Young master, I will give it back, I won't sell it." "Master," Kai said seriously. Kai, I master, I and fiery." The young man in he, stunned. "He, master, Lee young, The burly squire couldn't help but say coldly. It was lucky for a girl, who hadn't even entered the king's realm, to be favored by the young master, but she didn't know what was good for her. Kai's pretty face turned pale. She bit her lips and became nervous. She was a descendant of the Cloud-Weaver tribe, which stood aloof from worldly affairs. They were kind-hearted and often regarded as timid. Kai clenched her teeth and said, "Master Lin and I are friends. If he knows that you treat me like this, he will be very angry." Hearing such a soft sentence, the young man in black and his squire couldn't help but laugh. Obviously, this girl didn't even know how to threaten people. She seemed very simple. "Tell me, where does Master Lin come from? Why haven't I heard of him in the immortal burning world?" The young man in black asked with a hint of ridicule. "Lin Sun, child Lin." Kai said seriously. "Lin Sun." As soon as the name came out, the young man in black and his squire were shocked, and their faces changed slightly. Who didn't know Demon Lin? In the first year he entered the immortal burning world, he killed so much that blood flowed like a river in the city. The territories of the Golden Crow bloodline, the Beast Spirit Mountain, the Xuandu Dao sect, and the Sea Soul tribe were all uprooted by him, shocking the entire immortal burning world. Later on, Demon Lin entered the upper 9 realms with the cultivation of a king. The young man in black and his squire naturally knew how terrifying Lin Sun was. Although there had been no news of Lin Sun in the immortal burning world for the past 9 years, his name was still circulating in the immortal burning world. In these years, many people speculated that Demon Lin must have met with disaster when he went to the upper 9 realms because he had too many enemies. It was impossible for him to be a match for those ancient powerhouses. Some people didn't think so. But no matter what, Lin Sun was indeed a celebrity in the immortal burning world. What a joke. Lin Sun is indeed a top figure, but how could such a figure be friends with a little girl like you? The burly squire had a look of disdain on his face. He thought that Kai was using a tiger's skin to scare them. It was a very childish trick. At this moment, the young man in black also came back to his senses. He said with a slightly cold expression, "Let's not talk about this. 9 years have passed. Lin Sun probably didn't come back from the upper 9 realms alive. But you're using this to threaten me. Miss, do you think I dare not use force on you?" His voice carried a hint of coldness. Kai Kai's hands and feet were cold. She didn't expect to encounter such an unexpected disaster when she was about to leave the absolute summit domain. The attitude of the young man in black and his squire made her feel a sense of helplessness and despair. How could she escape safely with her strength? Boom! At this moment, a strange roar suddenly sounded in the sky above the tower of the immortal burning world. Then, a void tunnel appeared in the sky. For a moment, all the cultivators inside and outside the immortal burning city stopped what they were doing and looked at the void tunnel. "The powerhouses who went to the upper 9 realms are coming back," someone shouted excitedly. After 9 years, those powerhouses who were qualified to achieve the Ju King realm would return to the immortal burning world. How strong would their cultivation be in these 9 years? In these 9 years, how many powerhouses were buried in the upper 9 realms and could never return? Everyone was paying close attention to it. Even the young man in black and his squire were shocked by this scene. "Miss, you don't think that Lin Sun still has hope to come back, do you?" The young man in black noticed that Kai Kai, who was beside him, also revealed a touch of hope at this moment, and her crystal-clear eyes were shining like gems. This made him a little displeased. Kai Kai pursed her lips and remained silent. Boom! A bright figure was the first to walk out of the void tunnel. This was a silver-robed man with a single horn on his head. His whole body was flowing with Taoist light, and he was like a god descending to the world. As soon as he appeared, the invisible power emitted from his body seemed to cover the sky and the earth, and it spread in all directions, causing many powerhouses to hold their breath and change their expressions in horror. Even the young man in black couldn't help but change his expression abruptly. So strong. Is this the power that belongs to the Extinction King realm? The young man in black couldn't help but clench his fist. Although he had the cultivation of the 5th retribution of the Longevity realm, he had not set foot in the Extinction King realm. This had always troubled him, and he had been disappointed, and he had also felt pain and resentment because of this. "It's the ancient freak of the Silver Rhino clan. I didn't expect him to have such terrifying power," someone said with a trembling voice. To all the powerhouses in the burning celestial realm, the Extinction King realm was like a celestial being, and they were in a different world. Unexpectedly, after the powerhouse of the Silver Rhino clan appeared, he didn't leave, but stood to the side. Buzz! The void tunnel glowed, and another figure walked out of it. This was a graceful and slender woman bathed in light golden mist. Her aura was equally terrifying. "Oh my God! Isn't that the Saintess of the Golden Monkey clan? Look at her aura, it's simply too terrifying." There was another uproar and uproar in the field. The young man in black's expression became more and more gloomy, and his heart was bitter and unwilling. All those years ago, he was just a step away from entering the upper 9 realms, and he missed the chance to become a Extinction King realm expert. How could he be willing to accept this? In the following period of time, one Extinction King realm expert after another walked out of the void tunnel. There were men and women, and all of them were powerful and elegant. For a time, the entire burning celestial city was in an uproar, and countless exclamations of surprise resounded, and it lasted for a long time. However, no matter who those Extinction King realm experts were, all of them moved to the side as if they were waiting for someone. This caused them to feel even more anticipation. Exactly which peak figure possesses such might to actually be able to make so many Extinction King realm experts wait like this? It's been so long, but the young Master Lin you've been waiting for hasn't appeared. Do you think there's a chance he's still alive? The young man in black glanced at Kai Kai. Kai Kai's expression was gloomy, but she still insisted, Young Master Lin is a good person, and a good person can definitely come back alive. A good person? The young man in black sneered. When did he, demon god Lin, become a good person? It's the biggest joke in the world. Young master, it's the young master. Suddenly, the burly retainer next to him said excitedly. The young man in black looked up and saw a figure walking out from the void tunnel. He had silver hair and a heroic appearance, and there was a red mole between his eyebrows. It was the young master. The young master has also stepped into the peak, and he came back alive. The young man in black was also excited and overjoyed. However, what shocked him and the retainer was that the young master, who was like a god in their hearts, was also standing to the side like the other Extinction King realm experts. The young man in black and the retainer looked at each other. Even the young master has to wait in such a low-profile manner? Who is the person who made so many Extinction King realm experts wait even before he appeared? P.S. Thank you for your gifts, support, and messages. There are many names, so I won't list them one by one. This is the second update, and the goldfish will continue to update the third update. Chapter 1354. Inside and outside the immortal burning city, a group of practitioners also noticed that something was wrong. Those King of Hell realm were so dazzling and powerful, but now they all seemed to have a tacit understanding, waiting on the side of the void tunnel. No one left. Who on earth were they waiting for? Give up. Lin Sun has too many enemies. He must be dead. The young man in black noticed that Kai Kai was still staring at the void tunnel. She didn't seem to give up her hope. This made him a little unhappy. Did this girl really think that a dead man could threaten him? Miss, my master is right. Lin Sun is not popular. He has too many enemies. How can he make so many King of Hell realm wait together? The burly retainer sneered. Kai Kai's face became paler and paler. She said seriously, a good man will be rewarded. Child Lin will be fine. Another good man. The young man in black snorted. In my opinion, you and Lin Sun are not friends, are you? Kai Kai was stunned. After a moment of silence, she said, Child Lin may not think so, but as long as I treat him as a friend, it's fine. The young man in black and his servant both sneered. This girl was so innocent that it made people laugh. The young man in black waved his hand, signaling the burly retainer beside him to take action. He had lost his patience and wanted to capture Kai Kai first. If he could take such a fresh, refined, and pure girl as his personal maid and train her little by little, it would be a lot of fun. The retainer immediately showed a knowing smile, but it looked particularly vicious and awe-inspiring. In his opinion, his master should have done this long ago. She was just a girl of reincarnation developing realm. Why talk so much nonsense with her? But just as he was about to take action, Kai Kai suddenly cheered and said excitedly, Child Lin is back. The retainer's expression froze. At the same time, the young man in black also changed his expression and looked over. They saw a group of figures walking out of the void tunnel one after another. And the one walking at the back was Lin Sun. He was still the same as 9 years ago, wearing a moon-white robe. His figure was tall and straight, and there was no aggressive aura around him. Instead, there was a kind of unworldly aura. Among the King of Hell realm, his aura was even inconspicuous. But when he appeared, all the peak monarchs who were waiting near the void tunnel stopped what they were doing. Then, they all bowed slightly and paid their respects. In an instant, countless experts inside and outside the city of burning Celestial City widened their eyes in shock. The originally noisy atmosphere also became strangely silent, not a single sound could be heard. Lin Sun. He was still alive. This was simply like a miracle, and it was too inconceivable. In the immortal burning world, who didn't know that 9 years ago, Lin Sun alone set off a storm of blood in the immortal burning city and slaughtered countless powerful people? However, it was also because of this that he had offended countless ruthless people. In the past 9 years, all the discussions about Lin Sun boiled down to one question: who would kill Lin Sun? It was not about whether Lin Sun was still alive, because subconsciously, they all thought that after he entered the upper 9 realm, he was doomed to suffer. After all, he had too many enemies. But who would have thought that he would return alive today? If it was said that this kind of shock was enough to stun anyone. But when they saw that it was still Lin Sun whom they had been waiting for, the unprecedented impact was enough to make anyone dumbfounded. Previously, the top figures came out one after another, shocking the immortal burning world, and causing a great sensation. How eye-catching was that? But Lin Sun's appearance was like a big sun, overshadowing all the light present. The stars around the moon were just like that. The young man in black and his servant were also stunned. Their eyes were wide open, and their expressions were dull, as if they had seen a ridiculous and bizarre scene happen in front of them. As I said, Child Lin is such a good person. How could he not come back? Kai Kai was very excited at the moment. All the haze on her pure and pretty little face was swept away, and her originally dim eyes were as bright as stars, shining brightly. Her voice was filled with sincere joy, because Lin Sun had given her the warmest help and care in the past. The young man in black's expression kept changing. After a while, he suddenly sneered. Unfortunately, you regard him as a friend, but he will not regard you, a nobody in the reincarnation developing realm, as a friend. Speaking of this, he seemed to vent his inner resentment. He gritted his teeth and said, "Miss, it's not good to flatter yourself. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm very happy to know that Child Lin is safe and sound." Kai Kai smiled. Her character might be very simple, but she could also distinguish who was good and who was bad. After 9 years, she was very happy to see Lin Sun again, even if it was just from a distance. This was Kai Kai. Maybe her cultivation was low, maybe she had no identity, but she had her own temperament and cognition. The young man in black felt a little dazzling. The smile on Kai Kai's face was too bright, which made him feel an unspeakable anger in his heart. "What are you waiting for? Catch her for me!" he shouted, a little flustered and exasperated. The burly retainer was stunned and hurriedly accepted the order. With a fierce look in his eyes, he walked towards Kai Kai. A girl in the reincarnation developing realm simply and firmly regarded Lin Sun as a friend. Lin Sun might have forgotten who she was, which was ridiculous in itself. But at the moment when the burly retainer took action, he only felt a gaze sweeping over him. Suddenly, his body seemed to be frozen and his scalp was numb. A feeling of fear and uneasiness spread all over his body like a torrent, making him almost suffocate. However, all of this was merely swept by a single gaze. "What are you waiting for?" Seeing the burly retainer standing there, the young man in black was so angry that his face turned green. He raised his hand and was about to slap him. At this moment, a gaze fell on him. At this instant, it was like a shapeless sharp sword was pressed against his throat, causing the black-clothed young man's entire body to stiffen. His hands stopped moving, his face turned ghastly pale, and sweat poured down from his forehead. "Child Lin!" At this moment, Kai Kai exclaimed. She didn't know when the familiar figure of Lin Sun had come. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of her. Like a dream, it came so inconceivably that Kai Kai couldn't help being in a trance. "What's wrong?" Lin Sun asked, glancing at the young man in black and his servant. Just now, he had acutely sensed the commotion here, and he had also sensed the murderous intent coming from the master and servant. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to take action. How could he forget this little girl, Kai Kai? Kai Kai's voice was clear, and she quickly told him what had happened before. During this entire process, both the black-clothed young man and his servant seemed as if they were grieving the death of their parents, and they were excessively terrified and almost collapsed. How could they have imagined that a girl in the reincarnation developing realm would really have a relationship with demon god Lin? The difference was too big. It was like an ant saying that she was a friend of a dragon in the sky. Who would be new? And before that, they also confirmed that Kai Kai had said that she only regarded Lin Sun as a friend on her own wishful thinking. Because of this, they dared to regard Kai Kai as prey without fear. But who would have thought, an ant becoming friends with a dragon was actually happening right before their eyes? At this moment, the young man in black and his servant felt like 10,000 wild horses were galloping through their hearts. They were completely dumbfounded. I see. Lin Sun's eyes suddenly turned cold when he learned all this. With his current power, just a trace of his aura was enough to make experts of the same generation feel oppressed. Not to mention 2 kings who hadn't even entered the invincible realm. It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. The young man in black was about to suffocate. He couldn't take it anymore and explained with a sad face. The burly retainer was so shocked that he lost his composure. His knees gave way and he collapsed to the ground. What's going on? Old Toad, Alu, and the big black bird also rushed over and watched with interest. At the same time, a group of supreme kings who had returned to the realm of immortals with Lin Sun were alarmed by the commotion and rushed over. For a moment, supreme kings gathered here, changing the color of the sky and earth. However, to the black-clothed young man, this scene was simply too extravagant, and it caused him to feel extremely pressured. His heart was on the verge of collapse. Young master, please explain to Taoism Peer Lin Sun. I didn't mean it. The black-clothed young man looked to the side, as if he was asking for help. He was like a drowning person who had grabbed onto a straw, and his face was full of pleading. A figure stood there. He had a head of silver hair and a heroic appearance. There was a red mole between his brows. He was undoubtedly an exceptional figure. Lin Sun didn't know him, but he looked familiar. But it didn't matter to him whether he knew him or not. The silver-haired young man took a deep breath and cupped his hands. Brother Lin, this man is a direct descendant of my clan. Could you forgive him? I'm willing to compensate him with 10 times the price. Seeing this, the young man in black's heart rolled again. How could the young master, who was so proud of the world, bow his head in front of Lin Sun? Only then did he suddenly realize that Lin Sun in front of him was not the same as 9 years ago. Lin Sun pointed to Kai Kai next to him and said calmly, "She is my friend. Do you think this matter can be settled with just some compensation?" The other supreme figures all looked strange and kept silent. Who didn't know how miserable the fate of offending Lin Sun's friends would be? White Dragon Court and Ming Child were directly killed by Lin Sun, who arrived in time just because they wanted to seize the fortune of Alu's emperor's tomb. Brother Lin, the silver-haired young man smiled bitterly. He couldn't wait to kill the young man in black. This stupid pig should offend the friend of demon god Lin. Even if he wanted to die, he shouldn't do it like this. However, before he could explain, he was interrupted by Lin Sun. Don't say more. I just want a satisfactory explanation. If you can't make a decision, I'll do it. He would never forget that all those years ago, when he'd fallen into a state of emptiness and had completely forgotten himself because he'd comprehended the Tao and wandered through the immortal world like a madman, it was precisely Kai Kai who was by his side and didn't mind the dirt on his body as she carefully washed his face. Such a small action made Lin Sun feel a real kindness. Now, how could he be indifferent when he saw Kai Kai being bullied? The young man in black seemed to realize that something was wrong. He suddenly knelt down and kowtowed, begging for mercy. Young master, I really know I was wrong. I dare not do it again. The silver-haired young man sighed in his heart and slapped. The voice of begging for mercy stopped abruptly. P.S. The third update is here. Friends, the subscription results have begun to improve, but it's not enough. As long as more friends who are still watching pirated versions subscribe to support us, we will continue to add updates tomorrow. Chapter 1355. The young man in black was scared and his voice stopped abruptly. In front of him, the burly retainer, who was sitting on the ground, was killed by a palm and lay on the ground completely. His eyes were wide open before his death. He didn't seem to expect that he would be the first to die in the end. Was this a scapegoat? As a retainer, you don't dissuade your master from doing evil, but help the wicked. You deserve to die. The silver-haired man said coldly. However, all the people nearby could see that the silver-haired man wanted to save the young man in black with the life of a retainer. Lin Sun also saw it, but he just looked at him without saying a word. Such a look was a kind of attitude. The silver-haired man felt bitter in his heart. He realized that killing a retainer was not enough to satisfy the demon in front of him. He took a deep breath and looked at the young man in black with cold eyes. Child Lin, can you stop him from killing? But at this moment, Kai Kai seemed to have summoned up her courage and said in a low voice. Hearing this, the silver-haired man immediately showed his gratitude and looked at Kai Kai kindly. He knew that whoever started the trouble should untie it. Whether the young man in black could survive or not depended on whether this girl could change Lin Sun's attitude. Kai Kai, do you know what would have happened to you if I hadn't come in time? Lin Sun looked at the girl in front of him with a gentle look. I know. Kai Kai nodded and then murmured with some embarrassment, but I don't want you to offend them because of me. It's just a trifle. It's not worth it. Everyone was speechless. Demon Lin was afraid of offending others? It was like a joke. But in this way, it seemed that the girl's intention was extremely rare and valuable. Well, I'll listen to you. Lin Sun also smiled. Kai Kai was still the same as 9 years ago, kind, simple and pure, like a ray of sunshine, giving people the simplest warmth. Kai Kai was a little reserved. Well, you don't blame me for meddling, do you? As you said, it's just a trifle. As long as you think it's right, try to stick to this idea. Lin Sun smiled. Thank you, Lord Lin. On the ground, the black-clothed youth was so excited that he couldn't speak coherently. Idiot. You should thank this young lady instead. If it wasn't for her, I would wish for nothing more than to kill you with a single palm strike. The silver-haired man fiercely kicked him, as if he was exasperated at his failure to meet his expectations. Just like that, a small grudge came to an end. The black-robed youth was lucky enough to keep his life, and was taken away by the silver-haired man. The other heroes also left one after another. Perhaps the most absurd thing was that from the beginning to the end, Lin Sun didn't know who the black-clothed youth was, nor did he know the silver-haired man. I don't even know their names. But when Lin Sun appeared, the conflict was solved in the most smooth way without the need for him to do it himself. This was power. Subduing the enemy without a fight. Kai Kai, it's been so many years. Why haven't you entered the King Realm? Lin Sun was puzzled. Outside the city of Immortal Burning, Lin Sun and the others found a mountain at random and rested for a while. In about 3 days, the City of Guidance's power would appear in the Apex domain. At that time, all the practitioners in the 3,000 worlds could return to the ancient Desolation domain. Kai Kai was a little embarrassed and said, When I was cultivating, my father told me that cultivation is to do what I like the most. I only like to collect rosy glow dew, and that's it, that's right. Lin Sun exclaimed in admiration. Cultivation came from one's heart. Every practitioner's pursuit was different. Some people sought the extreme of sword Tao, such as Yun Qinbai. Some people sought to be a sage, such as Alu. Some people just wanted to see all the phenomena in the world and see the true meaning of Tao, such as Old Toad. There were also people who sought fame, benefits, techniques, and Dao. They wanted to be immortal for eternity, to be free and unfettered, and so on. What Kai Kai sought was love. She regarded cultivation as her heart, and she liked to collect rosy glow dew, which was her cultivation. Although her cultivation didn't improve very fast, it was also cultivation. Do you have a goal? Lin Sun asked. Yes. Kai Kai's star-like clear eyes suddenly brightened, and her delicate and clear face was full of longing. She said seriously, I hope that one day I can collect the clouds in the world, refine the most beautiful silk thread in the world, and then weave a dress with my own hands as my wedding dress. I also want to collect 10,000 different kinds of rosy glow-dew and make them into wine. When I get married, I will invite my friends who will attend my wedding banquet to taste it together." Speaking of her dreams, Kai Kai's entire person glowed with an indescribable radiance. That clear and melodious voice of hers was like the sounds of nature drifting through the air. The girl stood in the clouds on the top of the mountain with her hands behind her back, like the most gorgeous ray of light. Lin Sun was stunned for a while, and then praised sincerely, "This is the most beautiful goal of Tao I have ever seen." Kai Kai suddenly blushed and woke up from her longing. She lowered her head and said, "I'm sorry to make you laugh. Hey, Miss Kai Kai, if you want to achieve this goal, there is a very key problem to solve," Old Toad said with a smile. "What?" Kai Kai was stunned. "To find a Mr. Right. If I don't have a Mr. Right, what's the use of this wedding dress and wedding wine?" Old Toad said with a smile. Kai Kai's pretty face suddenly turned red, like the rosy clouds burning in the sky. Alu couldn't help but be happy. Kai Kai was really a lovable lady. That bright and clear character, that kind and innocent nature, was as beautiful as the spring breeze in March. At night, Old Toad suddenly reminded Lin Sun, "Big brother, if we want to return to the mortal world in the future, I'm afraid we still need Miss Kai Kai's help." "What do you mean?" Lin Sun asked. "The Cloud Weaver tribe is not simple. Their ancestor was a great legendary figure who was good at an extremely magical secret method. He could see the laws of heaven and earth as silk threads and cut the real, heavenly clothes." Old Toad said mysteriously, "Heavenly clothes are the supreme treasure that even the great emperors are attracted by. Different laws of heaven and earth have different magical effects. Some can avoid the tribulations of heaven and earth, some can ignore the shackles of rules and travel through the mysterious areas outside the void, and some can be turned into treasures comparable to emperor weapons. Because the Cloud Weaver tribe rarely appears in the world, few people know their origin and rumors. If I hadn't awakened the power of memory in my bloodline, I wouldn't have known these secrets of the past. Of course, the most important thing is that if we want to return to the mortal world, we inevitably need to enter the void tunnel between realms. And the Cloud Weaver tribe is best at space travel. With their help, it will be much easier for us to return to the mortal world in the future." Speaking of this, Lin Sun suddenly understood. As for the problem of returning to the mortal world, Lin Sun had also thought about it. The only tricky problem was how to go back. When he came to the ancient desolation from the mortal world, he broke a void tunnel with the power of the 5 colors holy formation of the Empire. But now it was doomed to be impossible. According to Zhao Jingxian, there was more than one way to the mortal world in the ancient desolation. For example, some ancient orthodoxies such as the Holy Land of Spiritual Treasure and the Heavens Pivot Holy Land all had such a way. But as early as a few years ago, before the Great Era really came, the power of heaven and earth in the ancient desolation had changed dramatically. The void passageways that led to the lower realms in the past had almost all collapsed and disintegrated along with the arrival of this shocking change. Even Zhao Jingxian himself was helpless about it. He could only take one step at a time and assess the situation. Therefore, for Lin Sun at this time, if he wanted to return to the mortal world, the first thing to solve was the problem of the way. And the proposal of the Old Toad made Lin Sun's heart tremble. The Cloud Weaver tribe. Who could imagine that a girl like Kai Kai came from such a mysterious tribe? And the mysterious, heavenly clothes reminded Lin Sun of the way to make the armor with spiritual tattoos. Although the two were different, they had some similarities. Moreover, the ancient desolation was so vast, but it was extremely strange that Lin Sun had never seen anyone with a armor with spiritual tattoos since he started his cultivation. In the mortal world, every spiritual tattooist knew about the armor with spiritual tattoos. According to Lin Sun's speculation, there must be other secrets. Similarly, if the old toad didn't mention the heavenly clothes, this time, Lin Sun wouldn't have known that there was such a magical treasure in the world. Forget it. If we really can't do anything in the future, it won't be too late to ask Kai Kai for help. Lin Sun thought for a while and made a decision. He didn't want to trouble Kai Kai. Kai Kai might be happy to help him, but would the Cloud Weaver tried behind her do the same? That might not be the case. Moreover, Lin Sun still had some things to solve. Even if he returned to the ancient desolation domain, he couldn't return to the mortal world immediately. Old Toad, you and Alu get ready. When we leave the absolute summit domain, I'm afraid there will be some troubles. Lin Sun ordered. Troubles? The old toad was stunned and suddenly remembered the siege they suffered when they left the ultimate ruins. Now they were about to leave the absolute summit domain. Would similar things happen again? I've killed so many so-called peerless figures. If the forces behind these guys know this, how can they bear it? Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep and he said indifferently, in the past we could only face it passively. Life and death were beyond our control. But this time, I don't want to be so passive anymore. The old toad nodded and said, the Sunset Tang Valley where the Golden Crows are entrenched is near the guiding place when we return. If those old monsters of the Golden Crows know that those little crows have been killed by us, they will definitely fly into a rage and pounce on us. Well, it can be foreseen that there will be sages, and there may be a lot of them. Lin Sun's eyes drifted. But in his heart, he was calm. After 10 years in the absolute summit domain, he had enough trump cards to face all this. P.S. Tonight's update may be a little late. Don't be impatient, everyone. In addition, thank you for your gifts and monthly vote. Tonight, I will definitely continue to update. So, continue to ask for subscriptions? Chapter 1356. Woo, woo, woo. In the ancient battlefield, the wind was howling. In the past, very few people would come to this desolate and oppressive battlefield. But recently, numerous experts had come here successively. Near the battlefield, there was an ancient and solemn city. It stood between the sky and the earth, as if it had existed since the beginning of time. It was the City of Welcome. 10 years ago, countless experts of the younger generation had entered the supreme realms from here in search of fortuitous encounters that even sages would be envious of. 10 years. The great world has changed the ancient desolation territory and the fates of countless experts. How different will the juniors who have entered the absolute territory be when they come back? A simple-looking old man in a Taoist robe and a tall crown stood on a light purple cloud with his hands behind his back as he sighed with emotion. Countless experts were waiting nearby. They came from different forces. The reason why they were waiting here was to welcome the experts who were about to return from the absolute territory. Hearing the old man in the Taoist robe, many people were moved. 10 years had passed. The ancient desolation territory was completely different. Many ancient orthodoxies had become stronger and more powerful. Many orthodoxies had disappeared from the world in the 10 years of bloody annexation. The great world was splendid. Not only the absolute territory, but the entire ancient desolation territory had also given birth to countless opportunities, auspicious signs, and good fortune. Mountains and rivers had changed, and the world had changed. Over the past 10 years, countless experts had risen in the great world. They were like wild weeds that had grown crazily in the world. The more experts there were, the fiercer the competition was. The ancient forces in the world didn't want to be left out. They had tried their best to expand in the past 10 years, trying to become the overlord of the great world. Over the past 10 years, blood had been shed, wars had been fought, and the flames of war had been raging. That was the most splendid great world that had never been seen before. At the same time, countless bloody storms had broken out in the past 10 years, which could be said to be unprecedented. Now, thinking of the shocking changes in the past 10 years, the experts couldn't help but sigh. no matter who they were. The Great World was a chaotic world that was already recognized by the world. The Great World has always been like this. Only the strong can rise, and only the great forces can survive. This is called natural selection. On the other side, an old man in a black robe with white hair and beard said indifferently. He was riding on the back of a huge black snake. The surroundings were deathly silent. The old man's name was Huashingxiu. He came from the Beast Spirit Mountain and was an old monster at the Immortal Realm's seventh tribulation. In fact, most of the experts that were able to make an appearance in the vicinity of the City of Guidance were seniors at the King Realm or above. For example, the old man in the Taoist robe, and he was riding on a light purple cloud. He was also an old monster who had stepped on the immortal Tao. His Taoist name was Tuachingzi, and he came from the Xuandu Tao sect. They represented different sects and had come to welcome the disciples that were about to return from the region of despair, so it couldn't be said to be condescending. Because they were clearly aware that if nothing unexpected happened, then most of the experts that were able to survive these 10 years of competition and return safely would definitely be able to break through into the King Realm. Haha, don't worry. When those juniors return, they'll definitely be reborn, and they can't be compared to the past. A beautiful woman in violet clothes chuckled. She sat in the carriage with a gorgeous and charming appearance, and when her gaze inadvertently moved, she gave others the feeling that she'd experienced the vicissitudes of life. She was the old monster of the Ocean Soul clan, Shang Luiyue. She was called Madame Shang. Juniors? Madame Shang, I'm afraid you have to change the way you address them. In the past, if those juniors became supreme monarchs, then be it in terms of foundation or cultivation, they could be considered to be of the same generation as us. Tua Qingzi from the Xuandu Tao sect sighed with emotion. All the old monsters at the King Realm had complicated expressions when they heard this. After 10 years, those juniors were about to become existences of the same generation as them. Not only had their statuses changed, but even their cultivations were different. In the past, they looked down on, disregarded, and didn't care about these juniors. But now, such a situation was bound to cease. This was the profundity of the Absolute region. It gathered supreme fortune, and in a mere 10 years, it was sufficient for a group of young people to rise up like rebirth and transform into overlords of the world. On the other hand, which one of these old monsters at the King Realm hadn't cultivated for hundreds or thousands of years, gone through innumerable hardships, and experienced innumerable tribulations to attain their current accomplishments? Such a comparison inevitably caused a huge gap to arise in their hearts. The discussions continued, and time flowed by. More and more experts from different factions appeared in the vicinity of the receiving ground, waiting for their turn. Such scenes were playing out in different areas of the ancient Desolation region. There were 3,000 guiding grounds in the ancient Desolation region, and they corresponded to the 3,000 worlds in the Absolute region. Now, as the time for the Absolute region to end was approaching, the vicinity of these guiding grounds had become the center of attention. Send someone to guide the members of my Heavenly Sword sect. A dignified voice resounded in the Heavenly Sword sect in White Jade capital. On that day, a few old monsters at the Longevity Tribulation realm, who had been in closed-door cultivation for a long time, walked out of White Jade capital. It's about time for them to come back. I wonder how many of them have reached the Extinction King realm this time. In the Spirit Treasure Holy Land, old monsters also appeared and went to the guiding grounds. The Heavenly Sword sect, the Spirit Treasure Holy Land, the Heavens Pivot Holy Land, the Immortal Pure Land, the Profound Seeking Sword House, the Black Sea Tengu clan, the Ancient Orthodoxies and clans all sent experts. The sacred hermits in different areas of the ancient Desolation region, such as the Heavenless sect, the Sacred Fire sect, and the Great Earth Treasury Temple, also reacted. The juniors of the Absolute region were about to return after the Absolute 10 years. For all the big forces in the ancient Desolation region, it was a big event. A large number of Extinction King realm cultivators are destined to appear in the Absolute 10 years. Each of them can be called the true God's favored ones. I wonder who among the Absolute 10 years can be called the number one. It must be Yunqi Bai. No, it could also be those ancient freaks with incomparably strong foundations. What are you guessing for? When the Absolute region ends, all the news will be spread out. These days, in different provinces and different cities in the ancient Desolation region, people were talking about the Absolute region. Countless creatures, billions of living beings, all fixed their eyes on the same thing. They were waiting for the return of the Absolute 10 years. 3 days later. Boom! In the sky above the ancient Desolation region, a loud bang sounded, shaking the 9 heavens and the 10 earths. The sound was so loud that all the creatures in different areas of the ancient Desolation region were shaken. Then, they all realized that the Absolute region would end today. Rumble, the earth and the sky shook violently, as if an earth dragon was turning over. In the sky above the 3,000 guiding grounds, the void cracked open, and a giant void door appeared, attracting countless people's attention. They're coming out. Quick, get ready. Whoever dares to make trouble in the dark will be killed without mercy. Noisy shouts and shouts started to ring out. At this moment, all the experts of the big forces didn't dare to be careless. They were afraid that someone would attack the disciples who had returned from the Absolute region. After all, those disciples had great fortunes. If they were killed, the loss would be so severe that no force could bear it. In front of the ancient battlefield, Tuocheng Zi of the Xian Du Dao sect, Madame Shang of the Sea Soul clan, Hua Xing Chu of the Thousand Beast Spiritual Mountain, and other old monsters of the King realm were also on guard. Everyone, don't panic. The Golden Crow clan is here. Who dares to make trouble? An old woman with golden flames flowing around her body said proudly. The old woman was Wu Jinhuan, an 8th Retribution Immortal Realm old monster. Her words didn't make the others feel relieved. Instead, they sneered secretly. They weren't worried about anyone else, but the Golden Crows who would stir up trouble at this time. The Sunset Tang Valley, where the Gold Crows resided, was located 8,000 miles away from here. As a sacred place in the ancient Desolation region, the Golden Crow clan's foundation and power were naturally extremely strong. Who wouldn't be worried if they had bad intentions? They're coming out. Many people were excited when they saw the tide-like figures coming out of the void tunnel in the sky above the guiding city. Disciples of Nebula sect, come to me. An old monster shouted. His voice was as loud as thunder, summoning the disciples who were returning. Descendants of the Black Sparrow clan, come over here. For a moment, many old monsters shouted loudly, their voices resounding through the sky and earth. They also took the opportunity to bring back batch after batch of juniors, which made them heave a sigh of relief. The liveliness lasted for a long time. After all, there were millions of experts who entered the burning celestial realm. No matter how many casualties there would still be a large number of survivors. What's going on? Where are the disciples of the Golden Crow clan? Suddenly, the old woman Wu Jinhuan of the Golden Crow clan let out a furious scream that shook the surroundings. Everyone, have you seen the descendants of the Xian Du Dao sect? Why haven't the descendants of the Thousand Beast Spirit Mountain appeared? Where are the descendants of the Sea Spirit clan? Where did they go? At the same time, Tuocheng Zi, Hua Xingxiu, Madame Shang, and the other old monsters were shocked and angry. Because not a single disciple had appeared up until now, and this caused a wisp of a bad premonition to arise in their hearts. They were all killed by Lin Sun. A gray-robed man who returned from the zone of extinction couldn't help but reveal the truth. What? In an instant, the gazes of the old monsters all turned to look at the gray-robed man who had spoken. I said, they've all been killed. Everyone here knows about this. The gray-robed man broke out in cold sweat as he spoke hurriedly. Is this true? The faces of Wu Jinhuan and the others turned gloomy, and their gazes swept past the experts who returned from the zone of extinction. All of them had various expressions, but they tacitly agreed. This was the truth, and it would be known sooner or later. It couldn't be concealed. Many old monsters at the King Realm couldn't help but gasp when they witnessed this scene. A single person killed the disciples of so many great powers? It was too ruthless. On the other hand, Wu Jinhuan and the others were like volcanoes that were on the verge of eruption. Their expressions were gloomy and livid to the extreme, and it was indescribably terrifying. The second chapter was delivered. Goldfish continued writing. Please don't be long-winded about the subscriptions. It's really very important. If you have the ability, please support us by reading pirated copies. Thank you in advance. Chapter 1357. Lin Sun. 10 years ago, this name had already spread throughout the ancient Desolation region. He was one of the most outstanding cultivators among the younger generation. He was born in the lower realm and fought alone. He rose through slaughter and was called Demon God Lin by the world. Even old monsters like Wu Jinhuan and Hua Xingqiu, who had been living in seclusion for years, had heard of this junior's name. However, as cultivators in the immortality realm, they didn't care about Lin Sun. They cared about the mysterious woman behind Lin Sun. 10 years ago, there was a huge incident that shook the world. A mysterious woman used a saint as a pet and destroyed the 6 major sects, including the Heavenly Sword sect, the Black Sea Dog tribe, and the Heavens Pivot sacred ground. Her motive was simple. She wanted to stand up for Lin Sun. At that time, the 6 major sects could only lower their heads before the mysterious woman and let her leave safely. The commotion caused by this incident was enough to shock any saint, let alone Wu Jinhuan and the others. However, they didn't expect that Lin Sun, a junior, would kill the disciples of their sects in the zone of extinction. What's going on? Wu Jinhuan's thin and narrow face was filled with violence. She was on the verge of going berserk. Hua Xingqiu, Tuoqingzi, and the other old monsters were the same. Soon, they learned the truth of the incident, and the truth couldn't be hidden at all. Everyone in the celestial burning realm knew that Demon God Lin had wiped out the territories of the Golden Crow tribe, the Ocean Soul tribe, and the Thousand Beast spiritual mountain the first year he entered the celestial burning city. Back then, blood dyed the celestial burning city red, and the stench of blood lingered for 10 days. This Lin bastard deserves to die 1,000 times for his crimes. Wu Jinhuan let out an extremely resentful scream. This enmity can't be resolved peacefully. Hua Xingqiu's face was livid, and his heart was bleeding. Where is he? Then, they locked their gazes on the void tunnel with murderous intent. Their auras were violent, as if they were about to devour someone. The atmosphere was dead silent, and everyone's hearts trembled. Only the howling wind echoed in the ancient battlefield, adding a sense of murderous intent to the dead atmosphere. Looks like these old guys still don't know who they are. Do they really think this is still 10 years ago? Someone in the crowd sneered inwardly. These were some experts who stood at the pinnacle, and as soon as they came out, they received a grand welcome from the elders of the sect. Only they knew how terrifying Lin Sun was now. However, they didn't remind him. This matter didn't concern them, and they didn't want to get involved in this kind of dispute. After all, the outside world was different from the region of extinction in the end. Wu Jinhuan and the other old monsters all had major factions standing behind them. They could not help but be wary of them. At the same time, these supreme kings were not optimistic about Lin Sun's situation. If those great powers were to find out what he had done in the absolute nothingness domain, they would probably be angered to the point that even saints would attack. Lin Sun might be extremely powerful, and could be called the first in the absolute domain, but after all, it was impossible for him to be the opponent of a saint. Lin Sun is out. Someone shouted. Whoosh. At the same time, a tall figure walked out from the spatial passageway in the sky above the city of guidance. His clothes fluttered with the wind, and he possessed an extraordinary bearing. It was exactly Lin Sun. At this instant, the gazes of everyone in the surroundings shot over in unison, and the atmosphere became even more silent and oppressive. The air seemed to freeze. "You're the bastard with the surname Lin?" At this instant, Wu Jinhuan was the first to lose control. He spoke coldly, and a terrifying killing intent spread out from his body. Lin Sun's expression was indifferent. His eyes swept across the surroundings, and finally fell on Wu Jinhuan, Hua Xingqiu, and other old monsters of the King realm. "Just you old things?" He frowned, seeming to be a little surprised. This stunned everyone present, as expected of demon god Lin. Even when he was in such a dangerous situation, his expression didn't change, and he was extremely courageous. "You evil creature, how dare you speak so sharp-tongued?" Hua Xingqiu, Tuocheng Zi, Madame Shang, and the others were furious. "Do you really think we don't dare to kill you with that mysterious saintess backing you up?" Lin Sun said indifferently, "You're wrong. I'm also a strong man of the King realm now. To deal with you, I alone am enough." His words were full of disdain. Some supreme figures sighed in their hearts. This was Lin Sun. No matter what kind of situation he was in, he was full of courage. But for Wu Jinhuan and the others, this was simply the biggest provocation to their dignity. A junior who had only trained in the region of extinction for 10 years dared to disregard existences like them? And Lin Sun's action at this moment was really as if he was ignoring them. He merely glanced at the surroundings for a moment before stepping into the void and heading off into the distance. From the beginning to the end, he no longer paid attention to the clamoring of Wu Jinhuan and the others. His contemptuous and dismissive attitude immediately ignited the killing intent of Wu Jinhuan and the others. "Evil creature, die!" Wu Jinhuan screamed, and his body glowed. He dashed out and grabbed with his palm. A dazzling golden claw condensed and slapped at Lin Sun. Boom! Even the void suddenly exploded. The nearby strong people all retreated, unwilling to be involved in such a fight. Unfortunately, Lin Sun still ignored this terrifying attack as if he didn't feel it at all. He just frowned and looked into the distance, puzzled. This time, when he returned to the ancient Desolation territory, the only thing worthy of his attention were the sages. But until now, he hadn't found any aura of the sages. This seemed a little abnormal. Bang! Before the golden claw got close to Lin Sun, it was disintegrated by an invisible force, and the light rain exploded. This stunned Wu Jinhuan, and his face darkened. He suddenly realized that Lin Sun might not be an ordinary King Realm cultivator. No wonder he dared to be so fearless. Kill! On the other side, Hua Xingqiu also couldn't help but attack. He waved his sleeve, and thousands of phantoms of fierce beasts soared into the sky. They turned into a torrent and rushed toward Lin Sun. Boom! The light around Lin Sun turned, and the terrifying attack collapsed with a boom and disappeared in the void. Looking from afar, he seemed to be invincible. Wu Jinhuan, Hua Xingqiu, and the other old monsters were shocked. Their minds became clearer, and they realized that there was something wrong with their opponent. But when they looked at Lin Sun, they couldn't sense any threat from him at all. He was too calm. There were only two possibilities. One was that his strength was like this. The other was that his cultivation was too strong and terrifying that they couldn't see through him. "No matter what, we must kill this bastard this time." Madame Shang attacked. She took out an emerald flying knife, and with a buzz, it cut through the void like cutting paper. It tore open a long and narrow crack in the void. It was shockingly sharp. This was her life royal weapon. It had been nurtured for 1,000 years, so its power was naturally extraordinary. Swoosh! The emerald flying knife slashed down like a green bolt of lightning, so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. This attack shocked many of the experts present. How could the power of a longevity 7th tribulation king be ordinary? But what made countless people dumbfounded was that Lin soon raised his hand and grabbed the emerald flying knife, as if he was picking a flower. His movements were slow and natural, but it made everyone look at him and gasp. Buzz! The emerald flying knife struggled violently in Lin Sun's palm, but it couldn't break free no matter what. In the distance, Madame Shang's expression changed drastically. "Do you know what a peerless king is?" Lin Sun turned around and asked indifferently. Wu Jinhuan and the others were shocked. They had already calmed down after testing Lin Sun for so long, and they realized that something was wrong. To be able to cultivate to their level, none of them were fools. Especially when they saw Lin Sun grab Madame Shang's life royal weapon with a casual grab, they immediately understood. The Lin Sun in front of them was no longer a junior that they could look down on and suppress. He was a true peerless king. What made them the most uncertain was that although they had cultivated for a long time, they didn't know or experience the power of a peerless king. It was because of this that they dared to attack without restraint. "Lin Sun, you killed all the disciples of our faction. Even if you are an existence that has stepped into the peerless king realm, you are destined to die." Tuo Changzi said coldly, "If you surrender now, we might give you a chance to turn over a new leaf." Although his words were cold, everyone could tell that his attitude had changed. He didn't dare to be arrogant anymore and only dared to threaten Lin Sun. However, what he said was right. Even if Lin Sun was a peerless king, how could he fight against those great factions? Right, you have never seen a peerless king realm cultivator, so you naturally don't know what it means. I asked a useless question. Lin Sun laughed at himself. But when these words fell into the ears of Wu Jinhuan and the others, they seemed to be mocking their ignorance, and it caused their faces to become extremely ugly. Only the peerless kings present understood Lin Sun's feelings, and they couldn't help but sigh with emotion. These old fellows probably didn't realize that the era they represented was going to become a thing of the past. In the future, the ancient desolation region was destined to be led by the peerless figures. "Little bastard, how dare you be so arrogant in the territory of the Golden Crow bloodline? I think you are really tired of living." Wu Jinhuan was the most confident because the Sunset Tang Valley, where the Golden Crow bloodline resided, was just 8,000 miles away. At this moment Lin Sun attacked. Clang! The emerald green flying knife in his palm droned as it swiftly flashed out, and it was inconceivably swift and fierce to an unimaginable extent. Poof! In the next moment Wu Jinhuan's head flew into the air, and blood sprayed like a fountain. In an instant, an old immortal seventh tribulation realm monster was killed just like that. Casually killing the enemy in an instant, this unexpected and bloody scene immediately shocked everyone present. Yu Huaxingxiu's expression changed. However, just as he was about to say something, he felt a pain in his throat. His vision turned black, and he instantly lost consciousness. His head was also thrown into the air, drawing a beautiful and poignant arc in the air. P.S. Here's the third update. Don't look down on Wu Jinhuan and the others for being stupid. It can only be said that they know nothing about the Peerless King realm. Also, as long as the subscriptions increase, Goldfish will add more updates tomorrow. Come subscribe to Zongheng, Goldfish is waiting for you. Chapter 1358. The 10 years of the Great Era had not only changed the ancient Desolation realm, but also the fate of many powerhouses. The most obvious change was the emergence of a large number of King Realm powerhouses in the past 10 years. The old monsters of the King Realm, who were already on the path of immortality, also took advantage of the opportunity of the Great Era to improve their cultivation by leaps and bounds. But it was only 10 years after all. Old monsters like Wu Jinhuan and Huaxingxiu were already overlords in the ancient Desolation realm 10 years ago. On the path of longevity, he could be considered a senior expert. But now, the two old monsters, Wu Jinhuan and Huaxingxiu, were beheaded in an instant. Their blood splattered across the sky. From beginning to end, They didn't have time to resist or react. The entire place was silent. On the vast ancient battlefield, countless powerhouses felt a chill in their hearts and their expressions changed. Was this the power of the peerless king realm? But wasn't it too heaven-defying? The old monsters of the seventh retribution of longevity realm could dominate any area in the ancient desolation realm without the help of sages. But they were as vulnerable as chickens and dogs in front of Lin Sun. Only the top figures on the battlefield knew that Lin Sun wasn't just a simple peerless king realm. His cultivation was also at the seventh retribution of longevity realm. Not to mention killing these old monsters of the same cultivation, he could even kill the enemies of higher realms. The number one person in the peerless realm and number one on the Tianjiao Golden List. Such titles were enough to dominate the entire upper 9 realms. How could anyone challenge his powerful combat power? Wu Jinhuan and Hua Xingxiu might be experienced and knowledgeable. Unfortunately, they knew nothing about the peerless realm. Ah! Madame Shang screamed as if she had suffered a great shock. She rushed up and ran away with all her might. In fact, she didn't even want her royal armament anymore. At the same time, Tuo Chingzi also panicked and chose to run away. The death of Wu Jinhuan and Hua Xingxiu was like a heavy hammer that completely shattered their confidence and made them realize how terrifying the young man in front of them was. Such a young man was no longer a junior that they could corrupt, trample on at will. He was a terrifying existence that could stand on equal footing with them, or even suppress them. If that was all there was to it, they could reluctantly accept it. After all, even if they couldn't win, they could at least rely on the great forces behind them to deter them. But what made them collapse was that Lin was not afraid of the threat at all. Therefore, he could only escape. Puff! The emerald green flying knife flashed and flew through the air. Then, another head was chopped off. It was Madame Shang from the Sea Soul Race. Her head was tossed into the air. Because of inertia, the headless corpse was still fleeing through the void. After several breaths of time, it crashed down from the void. His head and body were separated from each other for 8,000 zhang. That strange scene caused everyone to feel a chill run down their spines. At the same time, Lin Sun had already disappeared from where he was. With an incredible speed, he blocked Tuo Chingzi's way. Tuo Chingzi's body stiffened. He stopped in his tracks and his heart sank to the bottom. He said bitterly, "Lin Sun, can you spare my life?" Lin Sun answered him by waving his sleeve. Boom! Tuo Chingzi roared in anger. He used all of his strength to defend, but in the end it was useless. The difference in strength was too great. His figure suddenly crumbled and turned into ashes, scattering in the air. With a flick of his sleeves, he turned into ashes. The world was silent, the birds were silent, and all the heroes were dumbfounded. Even those who stood at the peak couldn't help but be shaken. In just a moment, all the old monsters were killed one by one. It was as easy as tearing paintings. Looking at Lin Sun again, he was as calm and elegant as before. Who else wants to avenge your disciples? Feel free to step forward. Lin Sun glanced at the audience. His clothes fluttered in the air. Although his breath was as calm as the flowing clouds, his momentum was powerful enough to swallow mountains and rivers. The audience became more and more silent. No one dared to respond. Countless questions surged in everyone's mind. How powerful was Lin Sun now? In these 10 years at the peak, how many unknown transformations had occurred in his body? Farewell, everyone! Seeing that no one responded, Lin Sun glanced at those peerless figures he had met several times and cupped his hands in obeisance. Then his figure flashed and floated away. From beginning to end, no one dared to stop him. After a long time, the silence in the field was broken. Those who came to greet Lin Sun began to ask about what had happened in the absolute domain in the past 10 years. Among them, the most eye-catching was the deeds of Lin Sun. "I'm ashamed that I didn't enter the upper 9 realms, so I don't know what Lin Sun has experienced. but I'm sure that he has set foot in the King of Extinction realm. Most of the strong people who returned from the absolute domain stayed in the immortal burning world and had no chance to enter the upper 9 realms. Naturally, they didn't know what Lin Sun had done in the upper 9 realms. In the upper 9 realms, Lin Sun first wiped out the places where the Golden Crow clan, the Sea Spirit clan and other great forces were entrenched. These questions were answered by those peerless figures. In the following years, he killed one peerless figure after another, such as Mingzi, Bai Longting, Gu Fozi. As more and more people learned about Lin Sun, the atmosphere in the field became more and more silent. Some old monsters were even covered in cold sweat, trembling with fear, and even breathing was difficult. It turned out that Lin Sun was not a simple king of Extinction realm. On the road to immortality, he could be called an overlord like a demon. What? Yun Qinbai was killed by Lin Sun? When they learned that Lin Sun had killed Yun Qinbai on the demon chopping platform, the atmosphere that had been suppressed for a long time suddenly erupted like a volcano that had been accumulating power for a long time. The whole field was in an uproar, and the exclamations resounded through the sky. Everyone's face was full of shock. At the same time, the other 2,999 receiving places in the ancient desolation realm were also in an uproar. This. How is this possible? Many old monsters were shocked and lost their voices. It was unknown how many experts had fallen into a daze because of this news. This news was indeed too shocking. Yun Qinbai, a legendary peerless figure of Sword Tao, died in the absolute domain and could never return. Who could believe it? It was as if a sun that should have risen and illuminated the ancient desolation realm suddenly fell from the sky. It was easy to imagine how much shock it caused. Is this young man already invincible in the absolute domain? When they learned that Lin Sun entered the ultimate place of inheritance as the first on the Tianjiao Golden List, and finally defeated all the heroes and became the first in the absolute domain, everyone was stunned. One person, in 10 years at the peak, created an undefeatable and invincible legend? This day, the ancient desolation realm was in an uproar. After 10 years, the young man who was despised and ignored by countless ancient orthodoxies had now risen to the top of the road to immortality. The number of peerless figures who had died in his hands was uncountable. Among them were Yun Qinbai, Ming Child, Gu Fozi, Bai Longting, and other prominent figures. All of this news swept across the entire realm of ancient desolation like a storm in the background of this great world. This young man has become a great power. When some ancient orthodoxies heard this news, they were all shocked and sighed with emotion. This was fate. In 10 years, because of the absolute domain, a peerless figure like a monster was created. His existence was destined to be the focus of the world. He killed so many disciples of the big forces. How could he let it go? Back then, he had the support of the mysterious Saintess. Now, will the mysterious Saintess still shield him from the wind and rain? Wrong. Even if the mysterious Saintess is still alive, she can't resist the revenge of so many big forces. Countless discussions resounded in the ancient desolation realm. The absolute domain had indeed come to an end, but everyone knew that Lin Sun, who was crowned as the first in the absolute domain, would usher in a big storm. Back then, because of the mysterious Saintess, our sky-reaching sword sect chose to bow our heads. But this time, we won't do that. In the sky-reaching sword sect in White Jing, an old voice sounded. Kuya Yushio, go out and bring back the sky-reaching sword and this young man's head. That day, in the forbidden area of the back mountain of the sky-reaching sword sect, 2 old antiques who had been in closed-door training for countless years stepped out of the gate. The Arhat is also in trouble. In an old and inconspicuous temple in the Great Earth Treasury Temple, a skinny old monk sitting cross-legged let out a sigh. As expected, this heretic can't be left alive. The old monk picked up the wooden fish next to him and gently knocked it. Dong. An invisible Zen sound resounded in the bitter forbidden land of the great Earth Treasury Temple. The bitter forbidden land was the place where the sages of the great Earth Treasury Temple cultivated in seclusion. It was also one of the forbidden areas of the great Earth Treasury Temple. Senior Brother Fa Jing, there's one thing that I need you to do. In the temple, the old monk spoke slowly. This young man must be killed. If the mysterious saintess attacks, she will definitely become the enemy of all the big forces. I'm afraid that even she can't bear the consequences. However, for safety's sake, don't reveal your identities. As a sage, it's easy for me to kill a supreme king in the seventh retribution of the immortality realm. Go. On this day, the Sea Soul clan, the Xuandu Taoist sect, the Beast's spiritual mountain, the moon-worshipping sect, and other ancient orthodoxies all took action. On this day, all the sages in the ancient desolation realm went out. The killing tribulation is coming. In the divine secret pavilion of the Saint Hermit grounds, a sage had a sudden impulse and made a divination. The divination was, blood like a rainbow covering the world. In the 10th year of the Grand Era, the absolute domain has come to an end. Because of Lin Sun alone, the ancient desolation realm was shaken. Dragons and snakes rose from the land, the heavens sent a killing disaster, and all the sages went out. This is something that has never happened before. Under this tribulation, regardless of success or failure, this young man can be called a hero of the present age and leave his name in history. In the divine secret pavilion, a sage held a brush and wrote. Every word and sentence was enshrouded in Taoist light, as if it was branded in history. His pen name was Spring and Autumn. His name was written in history. With the power of a sage and the brush of Spring and Autumn, what was recorded in the book of history would definitely be something that would shock the world and be remembered by the future generations. And today, Lin Sun's name appeared in the book of history. P.S. Demon God Lin, who was threatened by the sages, said, "Fellow Taoists, please subscribe to increase your combat power. Waiting online, urgent." Chapter 1359. There was a small bug in the previous chapter. The doppelganger of ancient Buddha was defeated by Lin Sun. It was Yun Qinbai who killed him. The world was boundless. After leaving the guiding city, Lin Sun's figure was as swift as lightning, galloping in the void. Old Toad, Alu, something is wrong. Although the sages haven't shown up, I suspect that they are hiding in the dark. Lin Sun transmitted his voice. Now, Old Toad, Alu and Kaikai were all hiding in the wordless pagoda. This was also to prevent any accidents from happening. Lin Sun could control the situation to avoid being restrained by too many people. You must be careful of the golden crows. These crows are unruly and vengeful. Their territory, Sunset Tang Valley, is nearby. Old Toad reminded him quickly. I know. The most urgent thing is to leave here first. Speaking of this, Lin Sun suddenly noticed something. He paused in the void and looked into the distance. Boom! Almost at the same time, a dazzling golden brilliance swept over from a very far distance. In an instant it had arrived nearby, as if it had teleported. Accompanying this was a pressure that covered the heavens and the earth, and it caused this expanse of the heavens and the earth to wail while the rocks in the vicinity exploded into pieces and the ground cracked apart. This was the aura of the Saint Realm. Young man, do you think you can run away? In the cold and indifferent voice, the golden rainbow turned into an old man. He was dressed in a golden robe, his cheeks were thin, and his eyes were surging with frightening golden flames, as dazzling as a pair of suns. Standing there casually, he gave people the aura of a saint who controlled the world and all kinds of laws, oppressing the sky. The Golden Crow? Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. What he wanted really came true. I'm Wu Willow Chi, the 9th priest of the Suncrow clan. Young man, I've already heard of what you did in the region of extinction. I'll give you a chance. Obediently follow me to Sunset Tang Valley. Otherwise, don't blame me for bullying you. Wolyochi looked indifferent. As a sage, he had the foundation and strength to overlook all living beings. In his eyes, even if Lin Sun had stepped into the peak of the King realm and his combat strength was extremely formidable on the path to immortality, it was still insufficient. As far as I know, Setting Sun Tang Valley is 8,000 miles away from the City of Guidance. Even if they rushed over after hearing the news, it's impossible for them to catch up to me in such a short time. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. Have you been hiding in the dark before? Is this question very important? Wu Liuqi's face was expressionless. He stepped forward, and with every step he took, the world shook. The earth quaked, the mountains swayed, and the void was thrown into chaos. At the same time, the terrifying pressure on his body grew stronger and stronger, and it was like a shadow that covered the sky. I'll count to 3. If you don't lower your head, die. Wu Liuqi spoke, his eyes cold and emotionless. Anyone below the sage level was like an ant. Lin Sun, on the other hand, was like an ant in the eyes of Dark Willow Pool. 1. An indifferent voice resounded like a note of death. With the voice, Dark Willow Pool approached step by step, and every step he took was earth-shattering. For a time, the world wailed, and everything trembled. The invisible pressure of the sage flooded the world like a tide. If other strong practitioners were here, they would have been unable to bear it. Their mind would have collapsed, and they would have coughed up blood and fallen to the ground. Even Lin Sun felt an extremely great pressure at this moment, causing his entire body to tense up like a fully drawn bow. He had rarely encountered such a feeling in the 10 years he had been in the Peerless Realm. This was the Sage Realm. Standing on the road to immortality, it shined as brightly as the sun and the moon, and lived as long as the world. It could turn the rain and clouds into thunder. Let me guess, the reason why you chose to come here at this time is that you have no choice. After all, if you escape, you can't avenge the disciples of your clan. But if your opponent attacks you, you're afraid of provoking someone you shouldn't provoke, right? Lin Sun looked calm and spoke in an orderly manner. Strictly speaking, this was the first time he had faced the oppression of a sage since he started cultivating. The pressure he endured was great, but it was not enough to shake his mind. A touch of surprise flashed in Dark Willow Pool's eyes, and then he said coldly, "You're quite bold." Boom. The void exploded, which was extremely harsh. 2. His lips were as light as a thunderclap. At this moment, Lin Sun took a deep breath and ran all his cultivation to the extreme. In an instant, he seemed to be a different person. Every inch of his skin was flowing with brilliant Taoist light, and his momentum was like that of a demon. Today, I'd like to experience the ability of a sage with the cultivation of the 7 tribulations of longevity realm. Lin Sun's eyes burst out with burning fighting intent. He really wanted to know how big the gap between himself and the sage realm was. This approach might be extremely crazy. If other strong practitioners knew it, they would think that he was courting death. But Lin Sun was not afraid at all. Long before he left the Peerless Domain, he had such an idea. An ant trying to shake a tree. A strong disdain appeared on Dark Willow Pool's face, and he even suspected that he had heard wrong. Since ancient times, which strong practitioner in the longevity realm dared to provoke a sage like this? Wasn't he afraid of being slapped to death? 3. Dark Willow Pool no longer hesitated, and his eyes flashed with killing intent. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, his figure flashed and disappeared out of thin air. When he appeared again, he was already in front of Lin Sun, and suddenly pressed out his palm. Void moving! Only a sage could control the power. This sort of speed had completely broken free from the restraints of the void and broken the shackles of the void. If it were other strong practitioners, they wouldn't even have time to react. But at the moment when Dark Willow Pool attacked, a bright and unparalleled fist force had already swept out. This punch could be regarded as the embodiment of Lin Sun's strongest power at present. It was used with the star obliteration devouring way, and contained all kinds of power of the Great Way. And the anger of Yazi, the fighting saint method, and the eternal leakless method had already burst out, pouring all the essence, chi, and spirit of Lin Sun into this punch. It was no exaggeration to say that in the face of this punch, even people like Yun Chi Bai and Prince Xiaohao must be prepared and go all out. Boom! An earth-shattering collision sounded, and the void collapsed with a rumble. The land in all directions seemed to have exploded, creating a strange vacuum. As for Lin Sun, his figure flew backward in the void, as if he was out of control. He barely stabilized his figure after flying 100 meters away. Is this the power of the Saint Realm? Lin Sun's breathing was rapid, and his chi and blood were tumbling. He had the urge to cough up blood, but his black eyes were extremely bright, and he looked like he was nothing special. It's just a casual blow. Do you really think I can't kill you? Dark Willow Pool snorted coldly. He was actually a little shocked. He didn't expect Lin Sun to be able to block his blow. This was because even the king of the ninth tribulation of the longevity realm was no different from a chicken or a dog in front of him, let alone the 7 tribulations of the longevity realm. Below the saint realm, everyone was like an ant. This sentence was not said casually. But Lin Sun had blocked his blow. Moreover, it was a head-on collision. He didn't dodge. Whoosh! His figure flashed and disappeared again. The next moment, he had already appeared behind Lin Sun. He pinched his fingers into a seal and slashed down fiercely, like an ancient god throwing a divine mountain. Boom! It was as if Lin Sun had eyes behind him. A vivid and lifelike shadow suddenly rushed out, filled with the magical and indescribable power of the true dragon law. With a loud bang, the shadow of the Fushi exploded. In the rain of light, Lin Sun was still inevitably hit by the palm print, and his whole body was knocked to the ground. Die! Dark Willow Pool didn't stop and pressed his palm out again. Whoosh! However, at the moment when the palm was thrown out, a snow-white blade suddenly appeared and slashed at Dark Willow Pool's head at an incredible speed. Impermanence slash. Dark Willow Pool's eyes narrowed. He clenched his index finger and flicked it out. Clang! In the deafening collision, the broken blade was bounced away, making an ear-piercing sound. Hey, this treasure is amazing. It can actually block one of my blows. Dark Willow Pool was a little surprised. And the palm he sent out also failed to hit Lin Sun because of the attack of the broken blade. Old man, so you're a fake saint. On the ground, in the midst of the smoke and dust, Lin Sun's figure rushed up. Blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth, and he looked very embarrassed. However, his expression carried a trace of disdain. A true saint was able to condense Saint Dao laws, and their might was formidable and extraordinary. On the other hand, fake saints were only able to grasp the energy of the saint realm, and it was absolutely impossible for them to comprehend and condense Saint Dao laws. Dark Willow Pool was a saint indeed. His strength pressed down onto the sky and caused the surroundings to tremble. However, he hadn't condensed any Saint Dao laws at all. His attack did indeed possess the energy of the laws, but it was the energy of the laws that belonged to the path to longevity. It lacked the aura of a Saint Dao law. You dare to judge the Saint Realm? Dark Willow Pool's face sank, and he was infuriated. A junior that had only stepped foot into the ultimate King Realm dared to look down upon his Saint Dao like this. Lin Sun was too arrogant. Bang! He strode through the sky while his clothes fluttered. He clawed with his palm, and then a golden sun floated up into appearance. It illuminated the sky and emanated a terrifying aura that could incinerate the world. At this point in the battle, Dark Willow Pool was completely at ease, and he wasn't worried about the appearance of the mysterious female saint of legend. Earlier, it was precisely because he was afraid of this that he acted cautiously and probed Lin Sun's strength. If it wasn't for that, Lin Sun would have been dead to Dark Willow Pool a long time ago. At this moment, Dark Willow Pool's eyes narrowed. In Lin Sun's left hand, a big bow that seemed to be made of bones and skeletons appeared. It was rough and ferocious, and the bowstring was bright red as if it had been soaked in divine blood. When he saw the arrow in Lin Sun's right hand, Dark Willow Pool could no longer keep calm. He cried out involuntarily, Is this blue arrow? The arrow was simple and unadorned, as thick as a child's arm. The feather of the arrow was stained with dark red blood, and the dark tip of the arrow was flowing with a faint cold light. Just in Lin Sun's hand, there was a terrible power spreading from the arrow, oppressing the surrounding void to produce bursting ripples. One bow and one arrow were insignificant bow and blue arrow. In the absolute domain, there was no divine power, so holy treasures couldn't be used. But it was different in the outside world. Buzz. As Lin Sun pulled the bowstring to the full, a strange wave like the cry of a demon suddenly resounded through the world. At this time, Dark Willow Pool woke up from the shock. His face was livid, and his eyes were bursting with undisguised strong killing intent. Blue arrow. As a member of Golden Crow, he would never forget that this was one of the 9 arrows belonging to the ancient E tribe, which had killed many ancestors of Golden Crow. P.S. There will be an update before midnight. Chapter 1360. Go to Hell. With a roar, Wu Luqi held the golden sun in his hands and smashed it out. At that moment, it was like a real sun falling from the sky to destroy the world. The void melted, and the nearby mountains were all burning. Bang! At the same time, a strange whistling sound rang out. The blue sky arrow shot out from the fully drawn bright red bowstring. Between heaven and earth, there was a terrible scene of the galaxy exploding and everything collapsing. Around the insignificant spiritual bow, the scene of the sun sinking and the golden crow crying blood was reflected. It could be seen with the naked eye that the nearby void, dust, light, all fell into destruction in an instant, turning into violent turbulence and roaring. It seemed that this arrow was going to bring everything into a kind of nothingness and completely annihilate it. This scene was too shocking. It was just one arrow. The world was seized by its momentum. Boom! The blue sky arrow, like a divine rainbow, easily pierced the golden sun in the void, causing it to explode and turn into a turbulent flame. The blue sky arrow didn't lose momentum, whistling towards Wu Luqi in the distance. Damn it! Wu Luqi's face suddenly changed. In his opinion, even with the blue sky arrow, it was difficult for Lin Sun to exert the power of this arrow. After all, this man was only a 7th tribulation of longevity realm. But who would have thought that the power of this arrow was completely beyond his expectation? It's the power of that bow that makes the blue sky arrow exert power far beyond my imagination. As a sage, Wu Luqi was so experienced that he instantly judged the reason. Whoosh! His figure flickered, and he moved to the void to dodge. But what made Wu Luqi's hair stand on end was that the blue sky arrow seemed to have a life of its own. It firmly locked on him and whistled towards him like a maggot attached to a bone. I've forgotten that once this arrow is shot, it won't return without seeing blood. Wu Luqi was furious. Puff! Just when Wu Luqi was about to dodge again, he felt a sharp pain in his chest, and a bloody hole was opened by the blue sky arrow. He couldn't help but scream in pain, and his old face became ferocious. It was too weird. He was a saint, but he couldn't even dodge it. How could this blue sky arrow be so terrifying? At that moment, Dark Willow Lake recalled the memorial tablets that were enshrined in the ancestral hall of his tribe. At least half of those memorial tablets had died tragically under the 9 divine arrows of the Dei tribe. There were at least 10 sages who had died under the blue sky arrow, and every one of them had the cultivation of a saint. The most powerful ones even had the battle prowess of a great sage. But in the end, they were all killed by the Jadefall arrows. All of this was sufficient to prove how terrifying the Jadefall arrow was. At the same time, Lin Sun was also surprised. Since entering the ancient desolation realm, he had rarely used the insignificant bow. As for the blue sky arrow, he hadn't used it even once. Unexpectedly, the combination of insignificant bow and blue sky arrow could produce such terrible lethality. The bloodthirsty Queen Zhao Xingye is right. The 9 arrows of the great Yi clan are the natural enemies of the gold crows. And the insignificant bow is a peerless, murderous weapon. The bloodthirsty queen once said that if you want to find the spirit of the insignificant bow, you can go to the Sunset Tang Valley. In this way, there must be an irreconcilable grudge between the insignificant bow and the gold crows. It's a pity that my current strength is not enough to break into the Sunset Tang Valley. Otherwise, I really want to take this opportunity to go there. These thoughts flashed through Lin Sun's mind in an instant. But in his hand, he didn't stop and pulled the bowstring again. Buzz, suddenly, the strange fluctuation like the roar of the gods and demons sounded again. Dark Willow Lake's face changed. He raised his hand and took out a copper hammer, which was flowing with golden thunder and lightning, and smashed it at Lin Sun. This copper hammer was obviously a holy treasure. When it was used in the hands of a sage like Dark Willow Lake, the power it produced was simply earth-shattering. In an instant, the thunderstorm was surging, covering the sky and covering the earth. Thunder and lightning flower buds were condensed in the void, falling down with flowing lightning. Whoosh! The blue sky arrow flew out with a terrible sharpness. It directly broke through the thunder and lightning beams and rushed to Dark Willow Lake. Dark Willow Lake roared and struck with the copper hammer. With a bang, the blue sky arrow was blocked. But he staggered back by the terrible impact. His chest heaved up and down, and he couldn't help coughing up a mouthful of blood. He had suffered a great injury. Dark Willow Lake couldn't believe it. A young man in the 7th Retribution of Longevity realm had the power to hurt him with just a bow and an arrow? It was ridiculous. But the bias happened. Come again. Today I'll shoot the crow with the bow and kill you, old beast. Lin Sun's black hair fluttered, and his bearing was disdainful. The rolling power in his body poured into the insignificant bow like a river. Buzz, the blue sky arrow was put on the fully drawn bowstring again. The wind and thunder were surging, and the gods and demons were roaring. The fierce power shook the world. Dark Willow Lake's face was gloomy and livid to the extreme. A dignified saint had been repeatedly injured by a junior like this. It was simply an extraordinary humiliation, and it almost drove him mad. "I'll kill you!" he roared. Of course, the means of a sage were not so simple. At this moment, Dark Willow Lake waved his sleeve. Golden rainbows pierced the sky and turned into small sun-like light balls. There were hundreds of them, densely covering the sky. 1,000 days burning void. This was the supreme secret method of Golden Crow. It could draw the momentum of Zhou Su. It was a power that only a sage could master. Lin Sun's eyes suddenly narrowed. At this moment, in the Sunset Valley, thousands of miles away, at the bottom of a huge golden fusang tree, there was a prison sealed by the power of countless divine prohibitions. This place had been regarded as a forbidden area of Golden Crow for countless years, because there was an extremely ferocious existence imprisoned here. No matter how many sages of Golden Crow tried to attack, torture, and refine it, they couldn't kill it. They could only suppress it and bind it under the golden fusang tree. At this time, a strange hoarse voice sounded from the depths of the prison. "Blue sky arrow. No, my body. Could it be that my master has come to save me?" This voice seemed to have not spoken for countless years. It sounded very difficult, but everyone could hear that he was very excited. Boom! Suddenly, in the dark prison, a monstrous murderous spirit rushed out, like a demon that had been silent for thousands of years, awakening at this moment. The golden fusang tree that towered into the sky began to shake violently. The power of the sacred Tao forbidding formation that covered the surroundings of the prison glowed brilliantly, emitting a terrifying force that suppressed the living beings in the prison. Boom! The whole Sunset Valley was alarmed at this moment. For a time, cold voices suddenly sounded. Evil creature! It's been countless years. Still not giving up? Behave yourself! Evil creature, you will be trapped in this dark prison for the rest of your life until you die. With a loud shout, the power of law danced wildly around the prison, like a divine whip of order lashing fiercely. Cries of agony could be heard coming from the prison, which was mixed with mad laughter. You bunch of bastards, the thing I hated the most was not being able to kill all of you. Just you wait, when I break free, I'll slaughter your entire clan. His voice was filled with monstrous ferocity and hatred. Pa pa pa. The long whips formed from the power of the laws lashed out fiercely, and the maniacal laughter finally died down. Humph, trying to break free? Your master is long dead. You better give up. Soon enough, the cold voices vanished. Within the prison that was enveloped by darkness, a figure whose skin and flesh had split open sat silently, and his eyes carried a wisp of indescribable loneliness, regret, and disappointment. It's a pity that it's not my master, but a little guy borrowing the power of my body. Forget it, you've finally given me a glimpse of hope after being trapped for thousands of years, so I'll lend you a hand. As soon as he finished speaking, the figure took a deep breath and bit the tip of his tongue. He dipped his finger in the blood and drew complicated runes in the air. Buzz. The runes flowed as if they contained countless mysteries. The next moment they disappeared out of thin air. Plop. The figure seemed to have been drained of all his strength. He could no longer hold on and lay on the ground. However, there was a trace of satisfaction in his eyes. It's better to have hope than to have no hope. I've been trapped here and waited for thousands of years, 1,000 days burning void. Before the blow fell, Lin Sun's eyes suddenly narrowed, and a strong sense of danger surged in his heart. He judged in an instant that the old crow was crazy and used all his strength. It seems that I can only use. Just when Lin Sun decided to use a trump card, he suddenly saw a dense rune suddenly appearing out of thin air and pouring into the insignificant bow in his hand. Lin Sun's arm suddenly sank. He felt that the insignificant bow seemed to be alive at this moment. A terrible and boundless fierce aura emerged like a volcanic eruption. Little bastard, you can rest in peace now that you've forced me to use my trump card. Go to hell. In the distance, Dark Willow Pool roared with a ferocious and terrible look. Boom! Thousands of balls of light that looked like miniature suns suddenly poured down from the sky. It was like a sun rain. It was so bright and dazzling that the mountains and rivers in all directions were illuminated and burned. Everything seemed to be completely incinerated. This was the power of the 1,000 days burning void, the divine secret method. At the same time, Lin Sun had no time to react. The fully drawn bowstring suddenly trembled. Bang! The blue sky arrow burst out. Compared with the previous one, the power of this arrow was completely different. It had the monstrous momentum of destroying the universe and opening up the ages. A surging ferocious aura gushed out along with the arrow. It was like pitch-black ink, smearing the entire world a pitch-black color. The balls of light that were like small suns that were pouring down didn't even have the time to display their might before they were enveloped and drowned by the ferocious aura, all disappeared. This Dark Willow Pool was stiff all over. He widened his eyes and could hardly believe his eyes. This was his strongest divine means, but it was so easily obliterated? Bang! At this moment, a divine arrow had broken through. It was not like an arrow at all, but a sickle in the hand of death, full of fierce chi that was enough to change the color of the universe. It was extremely horrible. How could it be? Dark Willow Pool was so scared that his scalp was numb and his soul almost left his body. Since he stepped into the Saint Realm, he had not experienced the breath of death so close for a long time. Escape. Almost instinctively, he chose to escape without hesitation and operated the method of void moving to the extreme. Unfortunately, he still underestimated the terrible power of this arrow. With a puff, the figure of Dark Willow Pool, who was flashing and moving in the void thousands of meters away, was pierced by an arrow and his body exploded directly. The rain of blood poured down like a waterfall. It was sad and beautiful like a scarlet picture. A saint was killed by an arrow, and both his body and soul were destroyed. P.S. Send more updates. The foreshadowing of insignificant bow and blue sky arrow finally came in handy. In fact, as early as when Lin Sun entered the Absolute Summit domain, he arranged the guiding place near Sunset Tang Valley for today's plot. Everyone had a great time watching it, so please be sure to subscribe. Thank you, my friends. Chapter 1361. One arrow killed Wu Willowchi. Even Lin Sun was surprised. Even if Wu Willowchi was a pseudo-saint, he was still a terrible existence among the saints. But now, he was directly shot by an arrow, and both his body and soul were destroyed. Lin Sun looked down at the insignificant bow in his hand, and a strange expression appeared on his face. He knew that this bow played an important role in killing Wu Willowchi. I can't stay here for a long time. Lin Sun didn't have time to think more. He raised his hand to call back the blue arrow, picked up the storage belt and the thunder-light copper hammer that fell from Wu Willowchi, and hurried away. Whoosh! His figure flickered, running by in chi to cover his breath, and soon disappeared in the distant sky. Ninth priest. Dead? How is it possible? Just a moment later, a group of figures with terrible breath appeared out of thin air. The leader was an old man with a dark face and a sinister expression. He sensed the aura of Dark Willowchi's death. What shocked him most was that a saint like Wu Willowchi was blown up, and both his body and soul were destroyed. Did the mysterious saintess kill him? The old man's face was cloudy. Immediately, he waved his hand violently. You go back and report this to the patriarch. I'll go after Lin Sun. Yes, seventh priest. The other figures all realized the seriousness of the problem and took the order. This boy can kill Wu Willowchi, the ninth priest, and he can certainly threaten me. I can't be greedy and rash in this action. As long as I can catch his trace and prevent him from escaping, it's enough. Let's leave the rest to the others. The old man was Wu Henjia, the seventh priest of Golden Crow Branch. After a little thought, he made a decision. Whoosh! The next moment, Wu Henjia's figure flashed and disappeared out of thin air. Mountains overlapped, peaks converged, and the world was a vast expanse. Whoosh! In front of a canyon, the void flashed, and Lin Sun's figure appeared. He glanced around and floated to the ground. 10 years ago, when he went to the guiding place with Old Toad and Alu, he passed by this place and met Chi Yao here. Lin Sun found a cave and set up a Taoist restriction by himself. Then he breathed a sigh of relief. I need to hurry up and recover my strength. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Lin Sun had a strong premonition that when the outside world knew what he had done in the ancient Desolation realm, those ancient orthodoxies would definitely take action. Like the Heavenly Sword sect, the Great Kitagarbha Temple, and so on. Crash, taking a deep breath, he began to meditate and recharge his energy. The spiritual energy in his body surged like a great river. Lin Sun was afraid that he wouldn't have such a chance to rest in the following journey, so he had to be fully prepared. At the same time, Lin Sun began to look at the insignificant bow. That year, bloodthirsty Queen Zhao Xingye had reminded him that this bow was a great ominous weapon. It contained an incomparably terrifying aura. When he used it, the higher his cultivation base was, the stronger the backlash would be. From then on, Lin Sun rarely used this bow if it was not necessary. After all these years, he had already stepped into the longevity seventh tribulation realm. He was no longer the same as when he was in the lower realm. This time, when he used this bow to shoot Wu Luqi with the blue sky arrow, Lin Sun did clearly feel a kind of extremely terrifying power contained in this bow. Especially when he used this bow several times in a row, the fierce aura seemed to wake up and began to rush out. At that time, he had to use all his strength to barely control it and not be devoured by the fierce aura. If not, he would not give Wu Luqi a chance to breathe at that time. He would shoot arrows continuously, which was enough to kill the old crow. But later, when facing Wu Luqi's 1,000 days burning void, Lin Sun suddenly noticed that a dense and strange rune poured into the insignificant bow. It was also at that moment that the fierce aura in the insignificant bow suddenly became extremely docile and could be controlled by Lin Sun. It was also after that arrow was shot that Wu Luqi was killed in one fell swoop. At this time, Lin Sun carefully explored the insignificant bow with his spiritual awareness. It was as if he came to a demonic area covered with fierce aura. The horrible fierce aura surged like the Milky Way. Vaguely, there was the sound of gods and demons weeping blood and saints crying. Lin Sun couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. How many horrifying existences had he killed to accumulate such a frightening murderous spirit? Then Lin Sun noticed that a dense and strange bloody symbol was floating in the surging and boundless ferocious qi, flowing with endless mystery and extremely obscure. This rune was like a dominator, suppressing here and making the endless fierce aura tame, as if it bowed its head to surrender. My little friend, I'm the spirit of insignificant. Since you got this bow, it proves that you and I are destined to be together. In the future, if possible, please take this bow to Sunset Tang Valley. I don't ask you to save me, but I just want to use this bow to kill some old fools. In this way, even if I die, I will be happy. The voice was dry, and in the end, it was filled with uncontrollable anger and killing intent, which made the boundless fierce aura surge and boil. Lin Sun held his breath. At this time, the voice disappeared completely, and all the abnormalities returned to normal. Only the strange and dense rune was suspended in the air. Lin Sun withdrew his spiritual awareness. He had completely understood that when he shot Wu Luqi, he inadvertently got the help of the spirit of insignificant trapped in Sunset Tang Valley. The spirit of insignificant Bao must be the spirit of the insignificant Bao. For a moment, Lin Sun couldn't help sighing with emotion. Bloodthirsty Queen's guess was right. The spirit of the insignificant Bao was trapped in Sunset Tang Valley. As long as it could be found, the power of the insignificant Bao could be fully exerted. 2 hours later, Lin Sun got up, removed the Taoist restriction at the entrance of the cave, looked around a little, and then floated away. Not long after he left, a skinny figure suddenly appeared, and after sizing him up for a moment, he sneered. What a clever way of hiding! Unfortunately, in the eyes of the strong of the Saint Realm, you will still be able to find some clues. The skinny figure was Wu Henjia, the 7th priest of the Golden Crow branch. After a little thought, he crushed a jade talisman, and a white rainbow rose to the sky and disappeared. Wu Henjia waited for a moment, and saw the white rainbow fly back to him. He took it in his hand and turned it into a jade talisman again. In the jade talisman, the timely news was recorded. The 13th heaven priest is going to do it himself? Wu Henjia sized it up and sucked in a breath of cold air. In the Golden Crow branch, only the true sage could serve as the heaven priest. It was said that the sage was like the sky and controlled the fate. Although Wu Luqi and Wu Henjia were sages, they were fake sages and could only serve as priests. Their status was far inferior to that of the heaven priest. The 13th heaven priest was named Wu Xiotong. In terms of seniority, even Wu Henjia had to call him uncle. He had been in closed-door training for 8,000 years. It seems that the clan also suspects that the mysterious saintess killed the 9th priest, Wu Luqi, so they invited Uncle Wu Xiotong out. Wu Henjia was thoughtful. At this moment, Wu Henjia's heart skipped a beat. He was keenly aware that a cold and dangerous breath was locked on him. He abruptly turned around and saw a young man standing in the distance. The young man was holding a white bone bow that had been pulled to its limit. On the blood-red bowstring, a blood-stained arrow as thick as a child's arm was aimed at him. Blue arrow? Wu Henjia's eyes widened and he almost couldn't believe it. Immediately, he took a deep breath and calmed down. His spiritual awareness spread in all directions, and he said coldly, "Young man, let your helper come out. One arrow is enough to kill you." In the distance, Lin Sun looked cold. He had guessed that it would not be a smooth journey and that he would be followed. Therefore, when he left, he deliberately made a detour and came back. Who would have thought that he would actually discover the enemy? "So, the mysterious saintess is not with you?" Wu Henjia said in a low voice. He was deliberately delaying time and was extremely vigilant. He didn't think he was stronger than Wu Luqi. Of course, as a saint, he was not vigilant against Lin Sun, but the terrible existence that was likely to be hiding in the dark. Ho ho! Lin Sun laughed with a kind of indescribable irony. Bang! Without hesitation, the bowstring was pulled, and the blue arrow, like a divine rainbow, pierced through the sky. Ridiculous! Do you really think that a nonentity like you can challenge the power of a saint? Wu Henjia sneered. But right after that, his face stiffened and his scalp almost exploded. Because at this instant, he suddenly sensed the aura of lethal danger. It was not from the mysterious saintess he was afraid of, but Blue Arrow. Not good. He rushed up and was about to dodge. Puff. Unfortunately, he'd lost the initiative. The Jadefall arrow pierced through his body, and then his body suddenly stopped in midair before exploding apart. Before he died, he finally understood how Black Willow Lake had died. It was not the so-called mysterious saintess at all, but the Blue Arrow. No. It was the bow. What a familiar breath. The last trace of Wu Henjia's consciousness saw the insignificant bow still buzzing. For a moment, he understood everything. It was it. At this point, Wu Henjia's consciousness was completely cut off and he died on the spot. Lin Sun breathed a sigh of relief and put away the insignificant bow and the blue arrow. It was easier to kill Wu Henjia this time than to kill Wu Luqi. The reason for this was the element of surprise. The opponent was so vigilant against the mysterious woman sage that he ignored the terrible insignificant bow. Lin Sun stepped forward and was ready to collect the spoils. But at this moment, his face suddenly darkened. He quickly retreated, took out the vast universe arc and flew away. Boom! Just as Lin Sun left, an old and thin palm print suddenly appeared in his original position, with dazzling divine brilliance, and pressed down fiercely. Within a radius of thousands of meters, rocks, vegetation, mountains, void were all crushed into powder and turned into nothingness. This world seemed to collapse and perish all at once. Chapter 1362. Amidst the sound of destruction, an illusory figure floated out of the scene. It was a skinny young man wearing a gorgeous wide-sleeved robe with a flying sword as a hairpin. He was not handsome, but he exuded a sense of endless majesty. Only the Golden Crow clan knew that this young man was actually an old monster who had been in closed-door training for thousands of years. Wu Xiaotong, the 13th heaven priest of the Golden Crow clan. His status indicated that he was a true saint who controlled the power of the divine Tao. It's useless no matter how fast you run. Wu Xiaotong glanced at the scene, took a step forward, and disappeared into thin air. The aura of the divine Tao has appeared. Far away, two men walk side by side, both wearing a high hat and a wide belt, their sleeves fluttering. Suddenly, a middle-aged man on the left with neat hair and an indifferent expression frowned and looked into the distance. Senior brother Kuya, someone should be chasing after the same target as us. The middle-aged man's eyes were deep, surging with terrifying sword intent. Yes, it's a true saint. Judging from his aura, he should be from the Golden Crow clan of the Sunset Tang Valley. An old man with a skinny face and a doddering appearance spoke in a hoarse voice. A true saint? The middle-aged man was shocked. Junior brother Yu Xiao, we should act too. We can't let the heavenly sword fall into the hands of others. Kuya said in a hoarse voice. Of course. Yu Xiao nodded. Immediately, the two sages from the Heavenly Sword sect teleported away. Kuya, even he can't sit still. A moment later, a black-robed monk appeared. He looked very young, but his eyes were full of vicissitudes. It seems that I'm not the only one who wants to deal with this man, the black-robed monk sighed softly. It was just to kill a young man on the path of immortality, but they made such a big fuss. It would be somewhat disgraceful if it was spread out. Fine, I'll go and see what this man is capable of. How could he make so many saints come out and attract the attention of the world? The black-robed monk's figure flashed and floated away. In the ancient temple of the Great Earth Scripture Temple, an old monk murmured softly, "Senior brother Fa Jing. He should have already found the traces of that heretic, right?" In the distance, the outline of a magnificent city appeared in Lin Sun's sight. Whoosh! Lin Sun put away the vast universe arc and looked back. A quarter of an hour ago, after killing Wu Henjia, he suddenly encountered extreme danger, causing him to choose to escape without hesitation. So far, Lin Sun could roughly conclude that the one who did this must be a true saint. Because that aura was too vast and divine, it was far from something that figures like Wu Willow Lake and Wu Henjia could compare to. However, Lin Sun was not too afraid. He looked at the huge city that was faintly appearing in the distance. To be honest, if he wasn't in such a dangerous situation, he really wanted to enter the city to rest and relax. In the past 10 years, it had been a long time since he had experienced the aura of the mortal world. Forget it. Lin Sun finally gave up. However, just as he was about to take a detour, a low and pleasant voice resounded in the world. "Young man, if you dare to enter the city, the millions of lives in the city will be lost because of you. You should stop here." Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed slightly. In the perception of his divine sense, he saw a gorgeous chariot appear high in the void. In the chariot, a woman in a palace dress was sitting. Her skin was whiter than snow, and her hair was as black as ink. She was beautiful and had a peerless temperament. "Who are you?" Lin Sun said calmly. "Shang Yi of the Sea Soul Clan." The voice of the woman in the palace dress was pleasant, like pearls falling on a jade plate. Lin Sun replied and landed on the top of a mountain on one side. The mountain wind whistled, making his black hair and clothes flutter. He looked around and said, "You are a saint of the present age. Since you are here, why are you still hiding?" His voice was plain, but it resounded between heaven and earth. "Oh, the soul power of this little bastard is quite good." A light chuckle resounded from within the clouds, and then the layer of clouds there suddenly roiled before a slender, imposing, and mighty figure appeared. It was a man in a white robe, with a golden ring hanging on his left ear, which looked very strange. "Who are you?" Lin Sun asked. "Mo Zhao of the Beast's Mountain." The man in the white robe smiled slightly, looking extremely holy. "Remember what you said." Lin Sun glanced at him, and then looked to the other side. Over there, a bronze war chariot rumbled through the void. Blood flowed and energy surged forth. On the war chariot stood a blurry figure that was shrouded in black fog. "Fellow practitioners, I only want the heart of this bastard. The rest is up to you." The figure in the black fog on the battlefield said in a cold voice. Lin Sun didn't ask questions this time. He suddenly felt that there was no need to know who the opponent was. They could all be classified as enemies. In this case, who cared who he was? Lin Sun didn't care, but other people in the field couldn't ignore it. They all recognized that the figure in the black fog on the bronze battlefield was a big shot of the moon-worshipping sect in the sacred place. Holy Protector Xiahou Shui. Anyone else? Lin Sun glanced at Shang Yi of the Sea Soul Clan, Mo Zhao of the Beast's Mountain, and Xiahou Shui of the moon-worshipping sect. They were 3 sages. In terms of aura, there was no doubt that they were terrifying. Not bad. Possessing such a cultivation at such an age, and even becoming the #1 expert in the Apex region, suppressing all of his peers is truly shocking. Suddenly, a sonorous voice rang out. Ku Ye and Yu Xiu of the heaven-reaching sword sect appeared on the battlefield. It was Ku Ye who spoke. It's a pity that if you don't become a sage, you're just an ant. No matter how amazing you are, you can't defeat a finger of a sage. Yu Xiu looked indifferent. That's not necessarily true. Someone said coldly, not long ago, this man killed 2 of our saint priests with his own hands. His means are extremely cruel. Along with the voice, Wu Xiutong's figure appeared on the battlefield. His eyes were like lightning, locking on Lin Sun, who was standing on the top of the mountain. His words surprised all the old monsters present. They knew very well that although the saint priests of the Golden Crow were pseudo-sages, they could not be provoked by those below the saint realm. But now 2 pseudo-sages had died in Lin Sun's hands. This was naturally surprising. For a moment, they looked at Lin Sun with a hint of surprise. Was it that mysterious female sage who did it? In the sky, Shang Yi, dressed in a palace costume, walked out of the treasure carriage and asked aloud. As soon as these words came out, the eyes of all the sages present narrowed imperceptibly. The reason why they had not taken action until now was that they were somewhat afraid of this. After all, the incident of turning a saint into a beast 10 years ago had caused a great commotion. As a sage, they could regard Lin Sun as an ant and despise him to the extreme, but they had to be wary of the woman behind him. No, this little beast killed them with his own hands. Wu Xiutong sighed softly. Everyone, I have a presumptuous request. After killing this little beast, I only want a bow and an arrow from you. I hope you can fulfill my request. Everyone else was expressionless, neither agreeing nor objecting. Seeing this, Wu Xiutong sneered in his heart and said no more. He had already told them that if anyone dared to intervene later, he would not be polite. We are here to bring back the heavenly sword. Yu Xiu suddenly said, if you think that this sword should not be taken away by us, we can give you some advice later. Although his words were calm, they were full of killing intent. In this case, can I also reserve an item? An inheritance of our great earth temple has fallen into the hands of this boy. I will bring it back. A gentle voice sounded. Fa Jing, dressed in a black frock, appeared and instantly became the focus of all the people present. The Great Earth Treasury Temple was one of the best sacred places in the world, and Fa Jing was a true sacred monk. A group of sages appeared one after another and blocked all directions. They talked as if Lin Sun did not exist. They even communicated with each other and discussed how to divide up Lin Sun's belongings. Moreover, they kept calling Lin Sun a little beast and a little beast. Such a scene made Lin Sun's heart surge with strong killing intent. Did these old things really think that they could be lawless after stepping into the saint realm? There's nothing to say, little thing. Hand over your belongings one by one, and I'll give you a quick death. Xiahou Shui of the moon-worshipping sect said coldly. This was undoubtedly an undisguised humiliation. Ho ho! Lin Sun said with sarcasm in his eyes, a group of sages besieged me. Not only are you shameless, but you don't have the guts to do it. I'd like to ask, why don't you dare to do it after talking so much nonsense? All the sages' expressions became cold. Being ridiculed by a junior like this naturally made them unhappy. The most embarrassing thing was that Lin Sun's words hit their vitals. The reason why they had not taken action until now was that they were all afraid and vigilant of the mysterious woman behind Lin Sun. Similarly, they were not allies or friends with each other. Naturally, no one wanted to be the first to take action. The most ridiculous thing is that in addition to you who have revealed your traces, I'm afraid that there are still many shameless old things hiding in the dark. On the edge of the cliff, Lin Sun sneered without a trace of fear. Are you all worried that you will be whipped and driven away by an animal? This sentence was too heart-wrenching. All of a sudden, the faces of the sages in the field darkened. Everyone's aura suddenly spread, making this part of the world dim. The world was silent. The invisible and terrifying pressure of the sages gathered in this part of the world like a landslide and a tsunami. Such a scene was enough to make any practitioner collapse. "Guys, why don't we do it together?" Yushio said coldly. "Okay. Let's do it by ourselves." The others agreed one after another. Their eyes became indifferent and they regarded Lin Sun as a dead thing. They dared to come out and kill Lin Sun because they had something to rely on. Although they were more or less afraid of the mysterious woman, they could not change their determination to kill Lin Sun. What was more, there were many sages in the field from different forces. Even if the mysterious woman really came out, facing such a situation, could she block it? P.S. There will be 2 updates tonight. You don't have to wait. Tomorrow's guaranteed update will be released in one go, so that you don't have to wait chapter by chapter. Chapter 1363. Saints were rarely seen in the past, like a mystical dragon whose head and tail could not be seen. But today, all the sages came one after another just to kill Lin Sun. They joined hands to besiege this world. If this news spread out, it would cause a shock in the world. In fact, it was true. As early as when the sages came out, the sages in the ancient Desolation territory might not know about it. But for the ancient forces in the world, the news couldn't be hidden at all. Lin Sun must die. Some big forces made such a judgment. There was no suspense at all. All the people under the sages were like ants. No matter how powerful Lin Sun was, he was not a sage after all. If he was killed, any sage could wipe him out with a flick of his finger. What's more, this time a group of sages came out. If the mysterious woman sage appears, will things turn around? It's difficult. Some big forces analyzed that if only a few sages came out, they might not be able to do anything to the mysterious woman sage. But this time it was different. There were more than a dozen known sages, and many of them were true sages who had been in closed-door cultivation for thousands of years. Isn't it too unfair to target a young man like this? Don't they care about their reputation when so many sages come out? Some people were not happy with it. When has there been fairness in this world? Since Lin Sun rose to the present, he has been unscrupulous and killed countless people. He can only blame himself for offending too many forces that he shouldn't have offended. If you don't lower your head, you won't know awe. If you don't know awe, you will suffer. In the past years, there have been many similar things. However, it would be a pity if Lin Sun died. After all, his talent is really rare. If he can become a sage in the future, he is destined to amaze the ancient Desolation territory for a period of time. Because of this, those big forces can't tolerate his growth. He is already so powerful now. When he becomes a sage, what kind of terrible disaster will he set off? Yes, killing geniuses has been happening since ancient times. Lin Sun is the same now. Many discussions sounded in different forces in the ancient Desolation territory on this day, with different attitude. Some people felt sorry for Lin Sun, while others looked on coldly. Just wait for the result. No matter what, all the big forces were waiting. The domain of Deathly Shadow came to an end today. But would Lin Sun, the first person in the domain of Deathly Shadow, die today and disappear from the world? Deep down, Lin Sun was a person who would never pin all his hopes on others. He only believed in himself. If it was in the past, he could only use all his methods and strategies to resolve the various difficulties he encountered, or choose to escape passively. Because at that time, he was still very weak and did not have enough power to contend against the enemies of this world. But along with 10 years of tempering at the summit, he was no longer who he was in the past. He had already stepped into the Extinction Monarch realm. In the past 10 years, his cultivation level had broken through to the Longevity 7th Tribulation realm. Even his combat strength was invincible among his peers. But the biggest change was in his state of mind. 10 years of bloody storms had caused him to guess that such a scene would occur before he left the Apex region. He was fearless. Moreover, he did not choose to back down this time. Otherwise, when he left the Apex region that day, he could have changed his appearance, concealed himself within the surging crowd, and left without a trace. This was the difference in the state of mind. There were many reasons why he was fearless. The funny thing was that these saints were afraid and guessed that he might use the mysterious woman's power to resolve the predicament. Why would he need to trouble that senior to kill despicable people like them? He alone was enough. Therefore, even if he was surrounded by the saints, Lin Sun stood on the edge of the cliff without changing his expression. He was calm and fearless. Only the killing intent in his heart became more and more intense, more and more boiling, and he was about to lose control. This was a saint? They were just a bunch of shameless and despicable old dogs. Everyone, before we attack, I have to remind you to control your strength. Don't blow him up in one go. The inheritance of the great Earth Treasury Temple still needs to be extracted from his soul. Fei spoke as if he was joking and humiliating. However, he was not joking. He was serious because he was really worried that Lin Sun would be killed. In the eyes of the saints, Lin Sun was too weak. He was like a blade of grass that could be easily broken, like a fragile ant. Don't delay, let's send him on his way. Yu Xiu's voice was cold. Boom. In an instant, a few large hands reached out and covered the entire sky, completely covering the mountain where Lin Sun was standing. Then, they slapped down fiercely. It was as if they were swatting a fly. No one thought that Lin Sun could withstand it. Such a simple attack was enough to crush all the ants under the Saint realm. Lin Sun's eyes were cold. From the beginning to the end, there was not a trace of panic. However, when he was about to make a move, there was a sword sound that sounded first, clang. A sword came from the west, like a divine rainbow from the sky, cutting through all directions. The sword chi was incomparably gorgeous and dazzling. In an instant it cut through all the attacks. The sword chi was so mighty that it made the sun and the moon dim. In the field, the saints narrowed their eyes and looked into the distance. The ancient desolation is so big, but it can't accommodate a young man? A voice as cold as snow resounded. Along with the voice, a man in a green robe appeared out of thin air, stepping on a sword rainbow. The man was tall, with long hair hanging loosely over his shoulders. His eyes were full of Taoist light, and his whole body was full of sword chi, as if it was going to tear the sky apart. Hidden Cloud Sword Sage, Wei Songyun of Xianwen's Sword House. In an instant, the saints present recognized the identity of the man, and they couldn't help but frown, their faces darkening. It was naturally displeasing to be interrupted when they were about to kill their prey. Fortunately, I'm not too late. Wei Songyun floated down and stood near Lin Sun. As his eyes opened and closed, sword light gushed out, and he glanced at the field with a sharp and supreme power. Wei Songyun, you dare to interfere in this matter alone? Are you going to make an enemy of us? Someone snorted coldly, and his killing intent burst forth. Me too. At this moment, an enormous crepe myrtle flower bloomed, and an old man stood on it with his hands behind his back. His whole body was covered in divine light, and he seemed indomitable. Crazed sword sage of the Yi clan of Crepe Myrtle Mountain. Someone was shocked. I didn't expect that there would still be people in this world who remember me. The old man chuckled, and he had a matchless domineering aura. He wore a purple robe, and his hair was like silver. Although his face was old, his power was earth-shattering. Count me in as well. Amidst the cold voice, an extremely beautiful woman with peerless elegance floated out. She looked extremely young, but she called herself me. But when the saints recognized her, none of them felt that there was anything wrong with it, because this woman was from the Shao clan of the southern profound world. Her seniority was extremely high, and she had the title of Rakshasa Blade Saint a long time ago. Simply put, she was a female blade saint, and she had made a name for herself a long time ago. Little fellow, let me introduce you. That fellow who looks like a scholar is from the profound Sikh sword school, and his name is Wei Songyun. The old man beside him is from the Yi clan of the Crepe Myrtle Mountain of the southern profound world, and his name is Yi Jiuxiao. The woman said, "As for me, I'm also from the southern profound world, and my name is Xiao Bugue. Thank you, seniors." Lin Sun cupped his hands. He was originally prepared to attack, but he never expected that they would come to his rescue at this extremely dangerous moment. This caused his heart to be moved and his blood surged. After all, the current situation was that of a group of saints, and how dangerous was it? But Wei Songyun, Yi Jiuxiao, and Xiao Bugue had stood up for him, and they were not afraid of the group of saints. How could he not be moved? "What are you thanking me for? In the upper 9 realms, if it wasn't for you, the disciples of the profound Sikh sword school would have long been in trouble. Now that you're in danger, how can I just sit back and watch?" Wei Songyun's words were sonorous, and his murderous aura shot to the heavens. "What a joke, aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue?" A cold snort sounded. Everyone's expression was cold and gloomy, and they carried a murderous aura. "The 3 of you, if a real battle breaks out, I'm afraid you won't be able to save this little bastard. Are you sure you want to get involved?" Kuya was expressionless, and he was calm. The appearance of Wei Songyun and the other 2 was indeed a variable, but it was not enough to change the overall situation. "Let me give you a word of advice. No matter who comes today, they won't be able to save this little bastard. We're not the only saints here, and you better think carefully about the consequences of making an enemy out of us." Mo Zhao of the Thousand Beast Spirit Mountain sneered. "The 3 of you, step back. The situation is like this, and you won't be able to stop it," Xiahou Shui of the Moon Worshipping Sect said faintly. In an instant, the voices of the saints caused the weather to change. The arrival of Wei Songyun, Yi Jiuxiao, and Xiao Bugue was indeed a variable, but it was still not enough to make the saints fearful. "Are you all planning to be completely shameless?" Wei Songyun's expression was cold. "As saints, you commit such a despicable act just to kill a young man, aren't you ashamed? There's no need to waste words with them. The ancient desolation region has been silent for too long. The great era has arrived, and it's time to get rid of this group of scum." Yi Jiuxiao looked old, but he was arrogant and domineering. "Indeed, they're too shameless." Xiao Bugue sighed. "Saints are so dazzling, yet they disregarded their reputation and attacked because of a fight between the younger generation. This is the biggest joke in the world." The saint's expressions darkened. "Looks like a saint is destined to fall today." Yu Xiu suddenly laughed. "Today, whoever dares to stop us will die and be punished." His voice was filled with killing intent. In an instant, the saints looked at Wei Songyun and the others with undisguised murderous intent. "Then I'd like to see who will fall today." Wei Songyun also laughed with a cold expression. "Everyone, why are you courting death for an ant?" Fajing of Xidagarba Temple sighed softly. The other saints also sneered. Today, the saints gathered here just to kill Lin Sun. Not to mention Wei Songyun and the other 2, even if there were more helpers, they were doomed to be unable to change the situation. "Let's go together, it's just Chu Chu and the other 2. Suppress them all." Yu Xiu snorted coldly. The atmosphere was getting tenser and tenser. Boasting shamelessly. "Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me first." Suddenly Yi Jiuxiao roared. His figure flashed in the air, and he attacked Yu Xiu. His hands shone, and a bright sword intent shot out. Humph! Yu Xiu was fearless, and he rushed forward. His figure was like a sword, wandering around the void. Boom! The 2 fought, and Taoism shook the sky. Suddenly, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Sand and stones flew, and thousands of miles of land turned into ruins. P.S. 2 consecutive updates. Chapter 1364. If that's the case, let's do it too. Kuya said coldly from afar as he watched Yi Jiuxiao and Yu Xiu fight. Hearing this, the sages from the Sea Spirit tribe, moon-worshipping cult, and Golden Crow all nodded and looked at Wei Songyun and Xiao Bugue. At this moment, the world seemed to darken, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. When the sages set out, their power was like the heavens. At this moment, they all revealed their killing intent, and the surrounding area fell into a great terror. Wei Songyun and Xiao Bugue frowned, realizing that this battle was inevitable. They took a deep breath and their expressions became resolute. But at this moment Lin Sun, who was standing on the peak, suddenly said, "Seniors, this matter started with me, please let me settle it alone." His words stunned everyone present. Kuya, Fa Zheng, and the other sages could not help but be startled for a moment, then immediately smiled. "Not bad, although you are an ant, you are responsible. Sacrificing yourself can resolve today's matter. You are aware." Kuya nodded. The other sages laughed. They were surprised that Lin Sun would admit defeat before the battle had even started, but after thinking about it carefully, it made sense. "Kid, are you looking down on the three of us?" Yi Zhouxiao, Wei Songyun, and Xiao Bugue frowned, somewhat dissatisfied with Lin Sun's attitude. They had come to support him, even at the expense of all the sages. But now, this kid was the first to admit defeat. This made them somewhat disappointed. Could it be that they had misjudged this kid? On the cliff, Lin Sun said indifferently, "Aware? No, you have misunderstood. I mean, I alone am enough to kill you old bastards." What? Kuya, Wei Songyun, and Kuya could not believe what they had heard. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure rose into the air. Boom! Within his body, a dazzling golden Buddhist shrine that seemed to be cast from divine gold rumbled, its cryptic seal undone. At the same time, a grand Sanskrit voice resounded. From within the Buddha shrine, a crystal-clear heart sealed in dense Sanskrit rushed into Lin Sun's body. Dong! 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 A strong, thunder-like rhythmic sound began to ring in Lin's body. His consciousness, soul, bloodline, power in an instant, they were enveloped by a supreme energy. "Leave my murderous Buddha heart to break through the Tao of life and death with you." In Lin Sun's heart, a voice like that of a god resounded. The voice came from Xingjiao Buddha in the ancient times. The heart of killing pagoda was the greatest opportunity Lin Sun obtained in the 3000 pagoda. When one encountered a situation of life and death, one could remove the seal on the Buddhist shrine and obtain the power of the heart of slaughter Buddha to slaughter a path of life and death. All of this took a long time to describe, yet it was actually completed in an instant. Kuya, Fa Zheng, and the other sages were shocked at first when they saw Lin Sun standing in the void. Then, they showed a look of pity. Did this little ant really intend to fight against them? The ignorant are truly fearless. He doesn't know what's good for him. Some keenly noticed that Lin's aura had changed. It had become unfathomable, giving people an indescribable sense of mystery. But no one would be afraid of him. They were sages. No matter what tricks Lin Sun played, it was not enough to make them feel afraid. "Boy, do you really intend to court death?" Xiao Bugue frowned, very dissatisfied with Lin Sun's actions. "Seniors, you can just watch the show." In the void, Lin Sun's expression was calm and solemn, pretending to be mysterious. How dare a lowly thing like an ant clamor? Go to hell. Suddenly, the battlefield in the sky rumbled with desolation and evil spirit. Xiahou Shui of the moon-worshipping sect attacked with a sneer. His whole figure was blurred, shrouded in black mist. He held a bloody spear in his hand and struck out. Buzz! A bloody light swept out. It was as red as purgatory coming to the world. Ghosts cried and gods howled. Humph! Although he was dissatisfied with Lin Sun's actions, Wei Songyun could not help but take out a Taoist sword and was about to attack. However, his body suddenly stiffened as he saw an inconceivable scene. Lin Sun flicked his sleeve and destroyed the bloody halberd shadow, dissolving it into nothingness. It was as easy as brushing off a grain of dust. This, Wei Songyun's eyes narrowed and he was shocked. He was very clear about Xiahou Shui's combat strength. Even a sage would have to take this attack seriously, not to mention a young man in the longevity realm like Lin Sun. But now, Xiahou Shui's attack was dispelled by Lin Sun. With a flick of his sleeve, it was erased into nothingness. Not only Wei Songyun, but Xiahou Shui and the other sages were also stunned. Their eyes flashed as they realized that Lin Sun must have used some kind of strange power. Otherwise, it was impossible to dispel such an attack. Whoosh! Before the crowd could react, Lin Sun's figure disappeared into thin air. In the distant sky, Yi Jiuxiao and Yu Xiu had been fighting fiercely. But at this moment, Lin Sun's figure suddenly appeared and struck out a palm before Yi Jiuxiao could. Boom! The golden sword qi released by Yu Xiu was entwined with the terrifying divine Tao law. It was terrifying enough to kill ghosts and gods. Even Yi Jiuxiao had to deal with it with all his strength. But under Lin Sun's palm, the golden sword qi in the sky collapsed with a loud bang. This, Yi Jiuxiao was also stunned, his face filled with shock. He sensed that Lin Sun's aura had become so strong that he could not see through it. "Little bastard, you really have a death wish." Yu Xiu's expression darkened. He also sensed that Lin Sun's aura had changed. However, as an existence at the sword sage level, he was experienced. At a glance, he could tell that the power Lin Sun had borrowed did not belong to him at all. At the end of the day, Lin Sun was ultimately a seventh tribulation longevity realm. This could not be hidden from any of the sages present. Even if he suddenly possessed extremely terrifying power, the sages could see through it at a glance. They knew that this power did not belong to him. Therefore, be it Yu Xiu or the other sages present, they would naturally not be afraid. Swoosh! When Yu Xiu spoke, a brilliant sword qi slashed out. This was the true divine Tao sword intent. It was extremely profound and profound. If it were any other longevity tribulation expert, they would definitely be wiped out by the sword, their body and soul destroyed. But against this sword, Lin Sun only punched out. Boom! The sword that represented the power of the divine Tao exploded like paper. It shattered inch by inch in the void, causing a rain of light to scatter. This, Yi Jiuxiao, Wei Songyun, and Xiao Bugui were stunned. Could it be that they had really misunderstood this kid? He was not afraid, but did he really have the power to resist the sages? At the same time, Ku Ye, Fa Zheng, Shang Yi, Xiahou Shui, and the other sages in the distance also revealed looks of surprise. What kind of power is this? It should be the power left behind by a sage. This little bastard is borrowing it. Everyone, there is no need to be afraid. This kind of power is destined to collapse one day. It cannot be controlled by this kid for long. That must be the case. Ku Ye and the others instantly made a judgment. As sages, they had experienced countless changes and had rich experience. How could they not recognize this? At the same time, Lin Sun, who was in the void, said, "Seniors, please leave the battlefield. Today, I will kill sages and a bunch of old dogs." His voice was sonorous and reverberated through the heavens and earth. "You're courting death." Yu Xiu's expression darkened. He attacked again with his sword. The sword qi was like a waterfall that swept through the universe, destroying yin and yang and the five elements. It was extremely terrifying. Lin Sun did not dodge. He stood where he was and did not move. Only his right index finger pressed out at this moment. Buzz! The ancient and vast power of the spring and autumn annals descended into the world. The world changed, all things changed, and the order of life and death appeared. Instant of spring and autumn. However, its power was completely different from before. Then, the sword qi that was like a waterfall disappeared silently like snow melting in water. Yu Xiu's entire body seemed to be submerged in the spring and autumn annals. Boom! Holy light rumbled, and a rain of light exploded. Yu Xiu let out a painful cry. His figure rushed out, but he seemed to be staggering. Looking at his appearance again, every inch of his body was bleeding, and his skin was torn. In the field, the saints were moved, all of them shocked. Even though they had already guessed that Lin Sun had used a mysterious external force, they still found it unbelievable when they saw Yushio's tragic state. Yushio was a sword sage of the Heavenly Sword sect. He was not someone a fake sage could compare to. But now, he had been severely injured in a single strike. And his opponent was only a young man in the 7th Tribulation Longevity realm. This was unbelievable. When they looked at Lin Sun again, their gazes had become serious and dignified. They were not afraid of Lin Sun, but the power that Lin Sun had used. It was hard to imagine what kind of terrifying person it was. The power that he had left behind could make a young man in the longevity realm seem to have become a completely different person. Let me try this little bastard's methods. Seeing Lin Sun attack Yushio, Xiahou Shui of the moon-worshipping sect rushed out. He left the chariot and waved the blood-tearing halberd towards Lin Sun. Boom! The sky fell and the earth cracked. The sun and moon lost their light. The attack of a sage was terrifying, but facing Xiahou Shui's attack, Lin Sun only needed to wave his sleeve to resolve it. Xiahou Shui's figure seemed to have been hit by a primordial divine mountain, and he staggered back a few steps. Something's wrong. Ku Ya's expression changed slightly. Sensing that something was wrong, he suddenly appeared in front of Lin Sun in a flash, his palm and fingers stabbing towards Lin Sun like a sword. He could not watch Yushio be hunted down. Get lost! Lin Sun did not even look back. A divine rainbow appeared behind him, blotting out the sky and earth. With a rumble, it pressed out. Ku Ya was also pushed back like Xiahou Shui. In an instant, all the sages present could not help but change their expressions. Before, they had treated Lin Sun as if he was nothing. Their words were full of little bastard, little bastard, little bastard, and extremely humiliating. But now, they could no longer remain calm. Yi Jiuxiao, Wei Songyun, and Xiao Bugui looked at each other. They were relieved, but they could not help but be shocked. What kind of power did it take for a young man in the longevity tribulation realm to have the terrifying power to injure a sage? They could not understand it. P.S. To be honest, the subscription data of the past 2 days has dampened Goldfish's enthusiasm for writing. I feel a sense of defeat, and I do not know what to say. I hope that my friends who read pirated versions can come and support me. Thank you. Although I am disappointed, I will continue to add a chapter before dawn. Chapter 1365. Yushio was shocked and angry. Since he became a sage, he had experienced countless bloody battles, and he had encountered more dangerous ones. However, there had never been a time when he was so angry. A young man in the 7th retribution of the longevity realm, with the help of a mysterious and strange power, was invincible and injured him with just a raise of his hand. This feeling was like being bitten in the heart by an ant on the ground. What Yushio couldn't bear was the humiliation. In the past, he could kill all opponents above the sage realm with only one sword strike. But today it was different. Clang! Yushio had no time to think. His opponent had already come. He did not hesitate to take out his holy weapon. It was a red Taoist sword with a cold metallic luster. The sword hummed like a tide, with the traces left by the long years of battles. It had accompanied Yushio to conquer all directions and killed countless enemies. Slash! He shouted. His tall figure seemed to be infinitely tall. His sleeves fluttered, his beard and hair fluttered, and he controlled the sword in the void to kill. Whoosh! The Taoist sword glowed, and the murderous aura surged. Blood flowed around, and white bones piled up like mountains. It was terrible. In the majestic city far away from here, countless cultivators were also shocked at this moment, and their faces changed in horror. The originally lively street was suddenly shrouded in a terrifying and oppressive atmosphere, and the sky and earth were dim. Screams, uproars, and sounds of fear rang out one after another. Some people who boasted of their high cultivation rose into the air and looked into the distance. But soon, they were sweating all over, and their minds were lost, and their faces were pale. The sages attacked. There was an unimaginably terrible battle of the Sage realm taking place there. In the end, they fell from the void in a mess, like dumplings falling into a pot. At the same time, Lin Sun made a seal with his palm and smashed it out like an ancient emperor. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out. Above the sky seemed to explode, and endless bright holy light poured down. It was like the scene of the end of the world was coming at this moment. Then, there was a loud bang. In the rain of light, Yu Xiu coughed up blood and retreated. His clothes were torn, and his whole body was stained with blood, like a man made of blood. Boom! But before he could stabilize his body, Lin Sun had already rushed over like an extremely sharp blade with unparalleled momentum. Spatial Void Guide. Kuya attacked from the side. A green Dao sword flew out like a green curtain in the sky, drawing on the power of the Zhou Void. What are you waiting for? Attack and kill this beast! On the bronze chariot, Xiahou Shui roared. Black mist surged around him as the blood-weeping halberd in his hand slashed through the air, releasing a bloody light that filled the sky. Everyone could see that Lin Sun's power was extremely strange and terrifying. First, he had forced Xiahou Shui and Kuya back with a flick of his sleeve. Then, he chased after Yu Xiu and killed him, causing him to be injured and cough up blood non-stop. How could this be a longevity seventh tribulation eminence ant? He was clearly a terrifying figure who could kill sages. Therefore, all the saints moved out. Freeze! The violet palaces of the Ocean Soul clans Shang Yi fluttered, while a completely round and translucent pearl that was coiled with strands of the energy of Saint Dao laws floated up into appearance above him. As soon as it appeared, space, everything, the sky, the dust, and even light seemed to have been frozen. Even Lin Sun, who was fighting with all his might, suddenly froze. Ocean Saint Pearl, a bunch of old bastards. They're actually shameless enough to attack together. In the distance, Xiao Bugui's eyes narrowed. Just as he was about to help, he was stopped by Yi Jiuxiao. This kid wants us to watch the battle, so let's watch. Let's see what he's capable of to dare say something like killing sages. Yi Jiuxiao had a strange expression. If he's really in danger, we can attack then. That's right. We just need to pay attention to those guys who are still hiding in the dark. Wei Songyun's gaze was like a sword as he scanned the distant void. Boom! As they conversed, Lin Sun's figure suddenly stretched out, and a terrifying killing intent surged out of his body. It was as firm as a rock. It was as vast as the starry sky of the universe. Vaguely, the killing intent even gave off a feeling of perfection, light, and immeasurable. Under the impact of this killing intent, the power of the Ocean Saint Pearl suddenly exploded and dispersed. It's better to attack together. It'll save us some trouble. Lin Sun's expression was as calm as an ancient well. His voice was indifferent, with a kind of extreme calmness. His body was surging with killing intent, but it didn't seem awe-inspiring. Instead, it gave people a sense of solemnity. Kill. In the sky, the green Taoist sword flashed, like a curtain sweeping across the sky, covering all directions. The sword chi was brilliant, magnificent like a painting. The sword was like a curtain, and the curtain was like a painting. This was Ku Ya's swordsmanship. Boom! Almost at the same time, the blood torrent surged, and the rays of light shone. Xiahou Shui of the moon-worshipping sect rushed over with his halberd, besieging Lin Sun. Then, Shang Yi of the Sea Spirit Clan, Mo Zhao of the Beast's Spirit Mountain, and Fa Jing of the Earth Treasury Temple all moved. At this moment, the killing intent was surging, shocking both ancient and modern times. The attack of the sages was like a heavenly calamity. The sun and moon trembled, the earth shook, and everything in the universe was crushed like paper. Fortunately, this had happened in the sky above the wilderness. If it had happened in a densely populated city, it would have caused an unpredictable and terrifying disaster. After all, a king realm had the power to destroy a city. Not to mention the sages. In just a moment the world was in chaos. The sun in the sky seemed to be shaking, and the stars seemed to be on the verge of falling. In the distance, some sages waved their sleeves and set up a forbidden formation to defuse the impact of the aftermath of the battle. Otherwise, not only this place, but the farther areas would also suffer. Being besieged by the sages, Lin Sun's offensive slowed down and was restrained. He was no longer as brave as before. This also allowed Yu Xiu to escape unscathed. Little bastard, the power that doesn't belong to you is useless after all. Die obediently. Wu Xiutong of the Golden Crow lineage sneered. The power of this man is very strange. It seems to be related to Buddhism. We must capture him later and study him carefully. Fajing said casually. He stared at Lin Sun as if he was staring at a tempting prey. We are also curious as to who left behind the power that could actually allow a little ant to possess such heaven-defying battle prowess. Kill him first, and then divide up his things one by one. I heard that he obtained a lot of amazing fortune in the Forbidden Land. Okay. The sages looked indifferent. They attacked Lin Sun unceremoniously while talking. From their words, they had already regarded Lin Sun as a prey that must die. Everyone, let me lend you a hand. Suddenly, a black divine moon appeared. It was grand, dark, and emitted a kind of breathtaking power, emitting black divine flames. In the black divine moon, an old man with scarlet eyes and gray hair appeared. His murderous intent surged as he joined the battle. Obviously, he was tempted and wanted to get a share when he captured Lin Sun. Gojin Shan of the Black Demon Dog Tribe. I didn't expect this old dog to still be alive. Xiao Buguei frowned. You too, this boy's situation is not good. Are you really going to watch like this? Ha ha ha, how can I miss out on such a delightful thing? Everyone, how about you count me in? Suddenly, voices sounded one after another. Figures rushed out from the void in the distance, all with terrifying auras, and rushed to the battlefield. At this moment, the faces of Wei Cangyun and Yi Jiuxiao also became solemn. They couldn't wait any longer. Whether it was the old guys on the battlefield or in the dark, they obviously couldn't hold back and wanted to give Lin Sun a fatal blow. However, just as they were about to take action, Lin Sun's cold and indifferent voice suddenly sounded in the field. That's right, another reckless old thing has jumped out. Boom! Before the voice died away, Lin Sun, who was completely suppressed and in a precarious situation, burst out an unprecedented power at this moment. Golden divine rainbows swept out from his body and rushed into the sky, covering the sky and the sun. It was incomparably brilliant and brilliant. The world was dyed with a sacred golden color. Vaguely, there was a mysterious Sanskrit sound drifting from Lin Sun, making his figure incomparably gorgeous and sacred. From a distance, he looked like a supreme ruler. This is... The sages' eyelids twitched. They had a premonition that something was wrong. Their hearts palpitated, and they rarely felt a kind of oppressive and terrifying deterrent. Stop him! Wu Xiutong of the Golden Crow branch roared and stretched his body. A pair of golden wings appeared on his back and slashed at Lin Sun fiercely. Old Crow, I'll kill you first. But Lin Sun suddenly stretched out his hands and firmly grasped the huge golden wings. Then, he exerted his strength and tore it off. Blood poured out like a waterfall. Wu Xiutong let out a shrill scream. This true sage of the Golden Crow branch had extremely terrifying combat power. But when a pair of wings was suddenly torn off, it immediately shocked everyone. This bloody scene chilled the sages' hearts. During this process, the attacks of the other sages also hit Lin Sun's body, but they only made him shake for a while. They couldn't break the layer of dazzling golden light covering his body. Is this the power of a great sage? Those sages all changed their expressions. It was too strong. They had besieged Lin Sun and thought they were sure to win. Unexpectedly, such a reversal happened. Obviously, Lin Sun had reserved his combat power. And by doing so, He had deliberately shown weakness to the enemy and successfully lured out several sages, including Gojin-shan. This kid actually dares to bait the sages when they are besieged. He's too bold. In the distance, Xiao Bugue and the others who were about to make a move were also a little shocked. At this moment, they were not in a hurry to make a move. They wanted to see what kind of surprise the young man in the distance would bring them next. Or perhaps a surprise? As if he had heard their thoughts, the surprise happened next. After tearing off Wu Xiaotong's pair of golden wings, Lin Sun completely ignored the attacks of the surrounding sages and suddenly struck out with his palm. Not good. Wu Xiaotong's expression changed drastically. He used void diversion to escape, but what made him chilled was that the void was actually sealed by a terrifying force. Bang! The next moment, his head exploded, split open by a palm. P.S. Send more updates. Goldfish wanted to say a word of thanks to those friends who had been silently subscribing, supporting, and voting. Goldfish asked for subscriptions in hopes that those friends who watched pirated versions would also come and support, and not use it as an excuse to complain. Those people who mocked me, even if they think I'm complaining, I'm also working hard to add more. Chapter 1366. That palm, like a Buddha descending to the world, smashed the head of a true saint. All the people present were shocked. A true saint condensed the law of divine Tao, lived as long as the ages, shone as the sun and moon, and was definitely the top existence in the world. But now Wu Xiaotong, a true saint, not only had his wings torn off, but his head was also smashed. However, it was not so easy to kill a true saint. In an instant, Wu Xiaotong's whole body was flowing with holy light. His head and wings were reborn, but his face was much paler. Obviously, his vitality was greatly damaged. This was a saint. Almost all saints in the saint realm took care of three paths: body refining, chi refining, and spirit refining. Their life was tenacious and almost immortal. Why would there be the willpower and soul power of countless sages in this world, after being eroded for thousands of years, still survive to this day? Because the strength they possessed had long since arrived at a world-shocking state. Little bastard! Wu Xiaotong roared as if he was completely crazy. Under the watchful eyes of the public, he was beaten so miserably by Lin Sun, which made him lose face. Die! Lin Sun's cold eyes were like lightning as he rushed over again. During this process, the other saints were also attacking Lin Sun with terrifying divine path techniques, but they were unable to stop him at all. All the attacks were wiped out by the power radiating from Lin Sun's body, and even some holy treasures were shaken back. It was a complete mess. Wu Xiaotong, who was furious, changed his face again. His heart thumped, and he knew it was not good. But at this moment, Lin Sun had already raised his fist to kill. Boom! The murderous aura, like the vast starry sky, gathered in the dazzling fist energy. It was incredibly powerful, like a god lifting a mountain and smashing it down. Wu Xiaotong flapped his wings fiercely, and the wind swept across. He flashed to dodge, but his body seemed to be out of control, unable to move at all, and was shrouded by the terrifying fist energy. No! He roared, his face distorted, and he completely lost his composure, feeling a kind of despair and panic. Bang! With one punch, his head was smashed again. The most frightening thing was that, under the cover of this fist energy, Wu Xiaotong's body also exploded inch by inch. Rolling blood spread. Even if Wu Xiaotong's true saint body was almost immortal, he couldn't withstand Lin Sun's punch at this time. Boom! Lin Sun's fist force was like a huge millstone, obliterating the world. As for Wu Xiaotong's flesh, soul, aura, all of them had been transformed into ashes under this terrifying pressure, and not even a speck of ash remained. They'd been completely annihilated. There was dead silence. Everyone's expression changed drastically in disbelief. Dead? In the eyes of the world, the sage state was like an immortal existence. In the past 10,000 years, there had been very few true sages who had fallen. Because sages were too difficult to kill. Even if there was only a strand of his will left, a drop of essence blood, he could rebuild his foundation and recover. He was inconceivably powerful. But today, in this instant, Wu Xiu's form, spirit, and will were all destroyed. In the distance, Yi Jiuxiao, Xiao Bugui, and Wei Songyun were dumbfounded. This was too unbelievable. Boom! At this moment, a layer of blood-red light appeared in the sky. Vaguely, there was an aura of the collapse of the great Tao circulating, and the sound of weeping and lamenting echoed. When a sage falls, the heavens will mourn. In the city far away, countless cultivators and living beings felt a chill run down their spine. They stared at the sky that was dyed red by the blood-red light. How many years had it been? Today, a true sage had fallen. He's dead. On the battlefield, the sages immediately sensed the strange phenomenon. Their expressions were uncertain, and they looked at Lin Sun with surprise and fear. The death of a true saint was a huge blow to their hearts. Who exactly had left behind the power that allowed a little ant in the longevity seventh tribulation realm to have the power to kill a saint? Everyone, don't panic. There has never been an example of a seventh tribulation longevity realm cultivator surpassing the sage state. This kid won't last long. Fa Zheng of the Great Earth Scripture Temple said in a deep voice, and the sound of Buddha resounded throughout the world. Kuya, Shangyi, Mo Zhao and the others were also aware of this. Their eyes flickered, but they were not scared off by Wu Xiutong's death. Bald donkey, I'll kill you first. Lin Sun's expression was cold. His figure rose into the air and left at top speed. I'll do it. Xiahou Shui from moon-worshipping sect sneered. The entire bronze chariot flew in the void, surging with auspicious energy and surging with blood-red light. The scene was extremely shocking. Clang! Lin Sun stretched out a hand and slapped the bronze chariot from afar, sending it flying. It was very awkward. This was because this was the third time Xiahou Shui had been sent flying since the start of the battle. At the same time, Lin Sun waved his hand and the broken blade appeared in his palm. He swept it lightly. With a loud bang, the string of Sarira prayer beads that Fa Zheng had taken out was sent flying. This caused his expression to change slightly. What a powerful force! Evil creature, how dare you commit murder? Mo Kong shouted and transformed into 1,000 hands like a giant centipede. Each arm was silver and flowing with holy light. When they came together, he sent out thousands of palm print. Poof! 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 In the end, the broken blade swept past in an instant, and more than half of Mo Zhao's thousands of arms were cut off. The sky was full of broken arms, dripping with blood. It was extremely horrifying. This scene shocked the sages once again. Everyone, if you keep your strength, maybe someone will follow in Wu Xiutong's footsteps. Go Jinshan of Black Tengu said coldly. Kill! When the battle broke out, all the sages attacked without reservation and used their trump cards. For a moment, time and space were chaotic and the world seemed to be broken. They are completely shameless. In the distance, Yi Jiuxiao could not stand it anymore. He was extremely angry. Should we go and rescue them? Xiao Bugui asked again. Look again. Wei Songyun had a strange look in his eyes. Yi Jiuxiao and Xiao Bugui looked over and immediately found something unusual. In the sky, although Lin Sun was trapped in a chaotic battle, he was not suppressed. Instead, he looked incomparably brave. He seemed to have turned into a god, his figure filling the universe. Surrounded by golden divine rainbows, he showed a sense of perfection and immeasurable supremacy. Every move he made seemed to possess unparalleled might that could destroy all attacks. A group of sages was swept away by the power released, as if they were in a storm. What kind of terrifying power is this? Xiao Bugui said in a daze. I suspect that this lad is very likely to have been blessed by the King of Sages. Otherwise, he would not have the ability to kill sages. Yi Jiuxiao pondered. King of Sages? That is possible. Wei Songyun's eyes drifted. For the Saint Realm, it was also divided into different levels. The false sage was at the bottom, because they had no hope of breaking through to a higher realm, and their combat power was also at the end of the sage realm. The true sage already had the foundation to seek the divine path, and could condense the power of the divine path. Above the true sage was the great sage, who had opened up a true great path that belonged to them. This great path was like all the great paths in the world, and had the qualification to be passed down through the ages. In short, it was to spread the Tao to the world. Above the great sage was the king of sages. This realm was like the peak of all sages. They could sense the fate of heaven and earth, and could use the power of the heavens to turn stone into gold, reshape the universe, and turn the rotten into the magical. It was like an omnipotent creator. This was the sage realm. False sage, true sage, great sage, and king of sages. Each realm was obscure and mysterious, enough for anyone to spend a lifetime to seek it. In the eyes of Xiao Bugui and Yi Zhouxiao, if Lin Sun borrowed the power left behind by the king of sages, then it was easy to understand why he could kill sages with the cultivation of the seventh tribulation of longevity. Boom! Suddenly, Shang Yesu, who was in the battlefield, threw her hand and 12 ocean saint pearls flew out. They turned into a forbidden formation and suppressed Lin Sun. This was obviously her trump card. The others attacked violently, and also did not hide their strength, using their strongest skills. However, the 12 ocean saint pearls were blasted away by a pagoda that Lin Sun took out with a flip of his hand. The octagonal pagoda looked like it was made of glass divine gold. It had the power to suppress the 4 poles and overlook the heavens, and it emitted a magnificent golden light that soared into the sky. The wordless pagoda. However, when Lin Sun used it, the pagoda was clearly different from before. It emitted a supreme aura, brilliant and immeasurable. According to senior brother Xian Kong of Fangtsuan Mountain, the inheritance of this pagoda was mysterious. It seemed to exist for eternity, and it had the power of immortality. That was why it was called the Endless Way. Boom! The Endless Way pagoda glowed, and waves swept out like a tide. With a puff, Shang Yesu coughed up blood and retreated. Her face was pale, and her eyes were full of shock. The 12 ocean saint pearls were the sacred treasures of her Sea Soul clan. But now they were destroyed by one attack. Slash! Kuya shouted, and a green Taoist sword flew out. It was strong enough to cut down the sun, moon, and stars. When the sword intent rushed up, even the sky was broken. Chi! Almost at the same time, a divine sword flew out of Lin Sun's hand. It was 2 feet and 3 inches long, and it was dull and heavy. It was the treasure of the Heavenly Sword sect that he had taken from Yun Qinbai, the Heavenly Sword. Clang! The 2 sword intents clashed, and a deafening sound rang out. Then, the Heavenly Sword pierced through all obstacles, and Ku Ya's green Taoist sword was sent flying. Puff! Then, the Heavenly Sword pierced through Ku Ya's chest with an unstoppable force, nailing him in the air. It was too fast, and it was like a hot knife through butter. Even someone as strong as Kuya, a true sword saint, could not block it. His protective holy light was destroyed. The Heavenly Sword. Kuya was stunned. He did not expect that the sword of his sect would kill his body in such a way. Senior. In the distance, Yushio's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Puff! Suddenly, the through heaven sword trembled, and Ku Ya's entire body exploded. Bloody mist filled the air. Under the terrifying sword chi, the flesh and blood of Ku Ya's body were all destroyed. This shocked everyone. It was too sudden. At this time, Lin Sun had once again charged towards Fa Zheng of the Great Earth Treasury Temple. He hated the cultivators of the Great Earth Treasury Temple the most. At the same time, the sky was once again filled with bloody light, and the sorrowful cries of demons and gods resounded in the air. Kuya, a true saint, had fallen, and once again, the heavens mourned. P.S. Thank you for all the gifts and support from all my friends, and welcome new subscribers. Thank you for your support. Tonight, something happened a little late. Goldfish went out, and when she came back, she continued to write.